see an ever-changing news and computer terminology. Commodore news. Are you keeping up with the Commodore? Yes, the Commodore is keeping up with you. Are you keeping up with the Commodore? Yes, the Commodore is keeping up with you. Are you keeping up? Yes, the Commodore is keeping up with you. Are you keeping up? Yes, the Commodore is keeping up with you.
Hello and welcome to episode 182 of Zapped to the Past. I am Adrian Mills. I'm joined as always by Mr. Graham Raddings. If you have not listened before, this is a podcast where we discuss games that were released for the Commodore 64. Last week, we looked at our first batch of games from issue 74 of Zap 64, which we are in no way affiliated with, and were amazed by a Tomino who grimaced at Great Gurianos and impressed with I Play 3D Soccer. This week, we continue our look at the games in June 1991, along with what was lighting up our TV screens that month. Graham, is the middle of the month a quality hill to climb up, or a dip of unassailable horror?
Well, here we are back again. Back in time we go to June 1991, a month that saw little in the way of sunshine and plenty of dreary grey clouds and rain. And so in a month that astonishingly saw Julie Ann Gibson become the first woman to qualify as a pilot with the Royal Air Force, we drink tankards of ale at the Adventurers Inn with our trusty lizard and mermaid friends, and then head off across 8 troubled isometric kingdoms on a quest for stuff in Gauntlet 3, The Final Fight. And then visit another familiar game type as we run along to the right, carefully jumping over and on things as we look for more stuff in the odd Italian platformer Lupo Alberto, the video game. We know June 1991 will welcome the return of Robin Hood because, as we have sensed, Kevin Costner and his band of merry British stereotypes are rapidly heading to the shores of Nottingham via Dover. The geographic agony of it all. So while we wonder how fast Robin Hood could actually walk, we head to the gloomy outlook of another troubled adventure, this time in the flick screen, run, jump and seek world of Moon Shadow. We explore what a bat and ball stick defense game might look like if we take away everything and replace it with slow text in the crappy Cricket Captain, before finally heading to the not-so-United States of America and going compass point to compass point in the 8-bit demake of North and South. A chest full of video discs, this ain't. And even if it was, what good are they? You can't record on them. Some interesting C64 games from Italy, though, in this episode. And one game that should have been run-stopped from its first 10 rem. This is going to be crap. Be gone, demon. We're not going to know, are we, about the... we've got games to try. It's always exciting. But I said that... I'm still a little bit in shock at the fact that in June 1991, Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines exploded and it reduced the global temperatures by 0.5 degree for 3 years. Now, I remembered it being quite sunny. Well, I remembered it being sunny, but I must be completely wrong.
June 1991. I can't remember. I think we had a nice summer that year. I remember us playing out on the fields and stuff.
Well, they didn't in the Philippines, let me tell you that.
Well, I was playing on the fields. They were... What blew up? Mount what?
Mount Pinatubo erupted. So 20 million tons of magma was released from that, as well as so much gas and poisonous stuff. It was a big one. It was a big one.
Wow. And it chilled the planet a bit, cooled us down a little bit. Why was that? Because there was so much stuff in the atmosphere.
Yeah, it basically affected the way that the sun's rays are absorbed through the atmosphere because it pumped loads of gubbins into the atmosphere. The gubbins isn't an official scientific term.
I was going to say, is that the technical term?
But it's easier than trying to explain what it actually was. But yeah, it's pretty bad. But because obviously when I do the intros for this, I always try and look at facts and figures from that particular month and year. And that was an interesting one. And it really was a biggie, a real biggie. And I was trying to think, did it affect... Because we wouldn't have noticed it immediately in summer 1991, but we probably did in 92 and 93, obviously.
Yeah, probably. I just remember those summers. But then again, they're halcyon summers of my youth, and they're just full of like cornfields and sun and everything. So, you know.
Really? I don't remember going to any cornfields.
Oh, no, hang on a minute. That's the wonder years. Damn it.
Yeah, you found that body, the train lines. Oh, no, that was Stand By Me.
Yeah, that was it. All those good things we did. You know, we got attacked by that clown. Oh, no, hang on. That didn't happen. Anyway, it's June. It's the middle of the month. There are 5 games, Graham, to look at this week. 5 whole games. If you wish to keep supporting us, you can do that You can do that financially if you are so inclined by going to our Patreon. That is patreon.com/Zapped to the Past to keep this ship going on. I shouldn't mention ships, actually. It's a bad week for ships. To keep this train rolling, shall we say, to keep us looking at the games so you don't have to play them. There is particularly one this week that I wish I didn't even have to play.
I wonder which one that was.
God. But, play it I did because that's how I do. And yes, patreon.com/Zapped to the Past. Do we have a Ko-fi as well? Ko-fi/Zapped to the Past. And we're available on all the social medias if you want to come and say hello and have a chat. It's all good. It's all nice.
Insta, because people can't be bothered to say Instagram. X, because you can't shorten that down to anything for social media platform, formerly known as Twitter, of course. But X is a bit silly, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I still can't quite get me. I don't like any of them particularly, but we are on them and you can engage with us, I suppose. Is it Blue Sky is the new one that people talk about?
Blue Sky we're on, Threads we're on, Facebook we're on. We're just not on TikTok. I can't be doing with
Threads.
TikTok.
There's a bleak one. Just me. It's
Yeah,
emulation
bleak,
of a nuclear attack on Sheffield. He's like, oh, okay. I like the sound of that.
There's also that new one, The Day After.
Apocalyptico. Yeah, they're only about to catastrophic global events.
Yeah, there's The Day After. There's that new Last of Us. That's another one. Say what I did do this week, Graham. If I can just swipe off for a moment. I finally finished The Last of Us 2.
All right, you finally got. That's only taken you a few years.
4 years.
Are you really bad at it, or?
No, I wasn't really bad at it. I didn't take to it that much. It just took me, and I thought I'm going to finish it because I want to finish it before the series is out.
Yeah, that's the problem with The Last of Us 2. You get so far in, you think, I've got to see it through, even though it's boring the shit out of me.
It's very long. It's too long. It's way too
about
long.
3 times. Stop ending.
It's got more endings than The Lord of the Rings.
Yes, it's just stupid. The last ending was the stupidest of all of them. When they suddenly remembered that they had to put a bit of exciting stuff at the end. So you have the weird campsite of
the
LA thing. Yeah,
the Rattlers. The only reason that's there, I won't spoil it, but there's one. They need to weaken a certain character to make the final fight fair. That's the only reason for that whole section.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yep.
So, because otherwise, that one other character would beat the crap out of the other one, as it previously just happened.
And and I maintain that's a game where you play through half the game as one character, then you play through the same thing in a slightly different angle with different clothes on as a different character.
Yeah,
just like playing the exact same thing from slightly different elevation. It's like, why stop? This is. And I mean, I like the game and everything, but it was a bit daft. That.
Yeah, and the best bit in it is the for those who haven't played it, and I know we're talking about modern games, so we do apologise, but the best bit is the escape from Haven when everything's on fire. That bit is really very good.
Yes, I agree with you. There's some amazing bits in it, but it's just a bit too long and it's too repetitive. But it is still, you've got to play it because you've got to play it, right? So it's like you see, commit to it.
It's overly bleak as well. It's like, light it up a bit.
Yeah, it is a bit too bleak. And even the songs they sing are bleak. It's like they take happy songs and bleak them. It's like the future's so bleak they can't even sing happily.
No, absolutely not. They take On Me and turn
it in. I'm John Belushi getting that guitar. I'm like, bang, bang, bang. That's it, done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
So I knew you'd appreciate that because I think that's probably the last modern game you've finished, isn't it?
The Ghost of Tsushima I played after that.
Oh, you played that as well, did you? Okay. I haven't. That's another one I haven't got round to yet. So.
100%ed that. So there you go.
Wow. Well done, you.
Galactic eyes, sharp as Takagi, ninja's iron claw, see beyond. That's not even a very good IQ. That was on my ninja poster on my wall. That's the reason I know that.
Yeah, that's it. I remember that. Anyway, okay, there we go. I feel like we've put these games off long enough.
Yes.
That's modern games chat for you. We're great at it.
Let's go back in time.
Yeah, let's go back in time. We've got 5 games. Let's get to the very first one this week. And Graham, that's over to you. I think you've done the first 2. You get the trilogies, don't you?
Yeah, sometimes it happens.
Last Ninja's trilogy, you've got that. And here we have the third part. We have Gauntlet 3, The Final Fight.
Okay, $10.99. It's a heavy price, isn't it, for a game that never ever came out, really? And 92%. That's a good score for a game that never really came out as well. It was a sizzler, in fact. A sizzler!
Sizzle.
This was published by US Gold, or should I say wasn't published by US Gold. And it actually was developed by Software Creations. So that's coded by Martin Howarth. Now, he did Puzznick, Scumball, Sky Shark, Drockdead, Hoddead, Drektar. No, he didn't.
You remember them.
You remember. He did Baby Blues, which was a game that was not reviewed in Zap. I keep finding loads of these games at the moment that there's these, when you look back at the games they've done, and in this instance, quite a lot of these games were not reviewed in Zap. I mean, obviously I picked out the ones that are for relevance, so because it'd be silly otherwise, but Baby Blues wasn't. And Strike. Do you remember Strike, the bowling game?
Crappy bowling game with the man with the huge hand on the title screen.
Yeah, I don't think Martin Howarth prefers that description, I'll be honest.
I don't care. It was crap.
The graphics here are by somebody called Hayden Dolly Dalton, which is a good name. He did something called Cosmic Storm, which was another one that was not reviewed in Zap. And also the graphics are by Martin Holland. Now, he did Demon's Kiss, which is a game that was not reviewed in Zap. Baby Blues, of course, not reviewed in Zap. And Kendo Warrior, which we did like.
We did like that, yeah. We did.
It was a running and rolling game, as I recall. Run and roll.
Yeah.
And the musicians here are the Mighty Follins, Jeff and Tim Follin. Now, I don't quite understand who did what and how, because there's only 2 bits of music in the game, and they're both credited to Tim Follin according to the archives. But the credits are Jeff Follin. Maybe he did one of the versions of music. I don't know. Anyway, Jeff Follin did Psycho Pigs UXB according to his blurb. And Tim Follin, of course, Ghouls and Ghosts and Leadstorm. And we've heard them. And the box art was Peter Andrew Jones. So there you go. List of credits for you.
Good old Padge.
Good old Padge. Padgy. Oh, Padgy. Good box that on that Gauntlet 3, mate. Thanks a lot. Yeah, got you. I've got you
You're
back.
welcome, Padgy.
Make us a cup of Willie Padge. Anyway, so initially this was set for a summer 1991 release, of course. We would be talking about it, otherwise would we? But Gauntlet 3 suffered major delays when its programmer, Martin Howe, was made redundant or left or got ill. Depends on whose version you believe. I'm inclined to believe Martin Howarth's version, where he said he was let go, sort of a last-minute let go. And this was done before they had transferred the game onto anything meaningful, as in cassettes and stuff like that. How this was even imagined to function on a cassette, I do not know. It wouldn't work. But anyway, so they therefore left the publisher with a problem. They couldn't actually get it onto a system or get it published onto anything, disc otherwise. That was on a very, very limited release. In fact, later, it was even planned for a Kix label release at a budget level, but even that never got done. And I think because it was a disc-only game, I think it was on more than one disc. And of course, it wouldn't be easy to transfer, wouldn't be able to pack it down into whatever format it needed to be. So primarily, this was only ever really released for US members of something called the US Gold Software Club. That must be an elite bunch of, I don't know, understanding folk, let me tell you. Understanding.
Surprised they just didn't consider cartridge.
Yeah, I think that they didn't know quite what to do. Tells me. So it was never widely available. It did find its way into the hands of collectors, and leaked copies have allowed fans to play it. Maybe they leaked from the full version. I'm not 100% sure about that. And it apparently has emulator compatibility issues as well. But despite its troubled history, the game remains something of a hidden gem, apparently, according to the various blurbs, offering a fascinating story of what could have been. That's from not verbatim from the games that weren't, but there is an entry on the games that weren't for that. We'll pop that in the show notes so you can have a read. An interesting comment in there, a couple of them with people getting angry at the fact that his writing style is a bit erratic. I'm like, for God's sake, the guy was probably pretty young when he wrote that. They're so stupid from people, aren't they? Like, never mind the great content and the work that they do. It's like, yeah, your writing was rubbish. Your spelling's terrible. It's like, shut up, you stupid arsehole. Anyway, I didn't write that in the comments, but somebody probably did. But the interesting one there was that somebody said they bought a copy of this for 50p and then sold it for 900 quid a few years ago, which is a bit tidy, isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah, I call bullshit on that. But you know what? It's just a comment, innit? It doesn't mean anything. It might be true, might not be. So anyway, I was always a fan of my encounter with Gauntlet 3 has only ever really been via the music, because when you look through Tim Follin's list of music, you always come across Gauntlet 3 and you think, I don't remember ever playing that. And there's a reason, and I've just explained it. But the music is quite good, albeit there's not much of it. And it is in the kind of the same notion of Ghouls and Ghosts. Not as amazing as that, has to be said, but it is another piece of music when you hear it, you instantly get the vibe of the game that it's about. Better, I think, than the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, although that was out the arcade. And this isn't an arcade conversion of any description. This has nothing to do with the arcades. Somebody just thought this would be a good idea, didn't they? And there you go. So,
it's weird that it's got the massive Tengen logo on the cover, isn't it, LD? Which is
it's so many odd things, but I don't know that really they knew what the hell they were doing with it. And I suppose it's Gauntlets, so it's got a leaning on the franchise somewhere, hasn't it? I mean, it's got the name.
Guess. Yeah.
So it's the game that never was, really. So it is actually a game that wasn't, but it kind of was. So I don't know. It's a game that was, but not quite. I don't know how you really think about that. So Gauntlet 3, then what's it all about? Well, there is an extensive blurb for this because this did make it out onto other formats. And now, whether they got released or not, I didn't check because it came out on the Amiga and the Atari ST and whatnot. Now, I didn't check any of those versions. However, the blurb for the Amiga is more complete than the C64 one. And it says, the final quest. The ancient world of Gauntlet has many mysteries and dangers. Amidst its storm-tossed oceans, legends speak of one land which surpasses all others. Capra, home of the 8 kingdoms. Island of Magnus, the wizard keeper. This is never mentioned in any of the previous Gauntlet lore.
Who made this shit up?
Yeah. Capra has seen many wars in its history, fought between the denizens of its lands, mountains and forests. Death and misery wrought their harvests, and there appeared to be no end in sight to the suffering and agony. Then, several centuries ago, a wizard came to counsel the rulers of the kingdom which remained and bring them to peace. When all of those disputes were solved and the borders redrawn, the wizard said thus. But I don't phrase things like that. But anyway, okay. I have brought peace, and peace there shall remain. From each of the remaining kingdoms, I shall take a small portion and thereof make my own kingdom, the kingdom of magic. I shall build gates there. I'll see Bill Gates there, between this world and the dark dimensions which would devour it. Then let this be my law, the law of Magnus, the wizard eternal, the wizard peacekeeper. Should there be war again between the kingdoms of this land, then shall those gates be opened. Oh, I hate all this thee and they and shalling. He's over shalling now, isn't he? Then shall those gates be opened, and all foul creatures of darkness let forth. This be the final peace, for if it is broken, all Capra shall be at the mercy of the devourers. And at this point, somebody in the background went, "Get off!"
There's a crooked stick coming on just to grab him around the neck.
Just I think there is at this point. Is he a kid? I didn't vote for him. Anyway, the kingdom's rulers had little choice but to accept this truce. It doesn't sound very trucey. And so it was agreed. 7 kingdoms should become 8. Anyway, okay. In the wake of this agreement, peace came at last to Capra. It prospered, and creatures who were once enemies became friends. For 3 centuries, all was well. Then the Velcrons came.
Who?
The Velcrons, covered in Velcro, Adrian. Nobody was expecting Velcro armor. Sticks to everything. It's a bloody nightmare. The sound of resonated through the lands.
The Velcrons.
The Velcrons.
Have you made this up?
No, I wish I had, but I hadn't. Actually, I don't wish I had. No, actually, take that back. Legends spoke of sleek war galleys that skimmed the boiling oceans and others of vast caves that broke open on the surface of the land. Whatever their origin, the Velcrons were the servants of those grim entities who chafed behind the gates. Their purpose was singular, to bring the 8 kingdoms to war once more and cause all to be extinguished, or as they've written here, extinguished.
Extinguished?
Aye. Insidious.
Did Sean Connery write that?
Extinguished. Insidious and law-wise, the Velcrons sowed seeds of doubt. Shut up, Sean. Insidious and law-wise, the Velcrons sowed seeds of doubt and mistrust in the people of Capra. They brought the spectre of violent death back to the land and gave false counsel to kings and nobles. Finally, they achieved their aim. For one brief week, before fear and reason combined cried, "Hold!" the armies of the 3 kingdoms marched against those of the swamplands. Okay, I'm not sure if this is anything to do with the Velcrons, but we'll go with it. Quickly, the other kings rushed to establish peace once more, casting anxious eyes towards the Magic Kingdom, fearing the worst. When for a while there was no sign of the horrors foretold, all gave thanks to the gods for their deliverance. But as the months went by, a curse descended on the land. The rivers which flowed out of the Magic Kingdom became foul, polluted, and lifeless. New courses evolved, spreading more of the killing ooze, and the wind, wherever it blew, carried the stench of death and decay.
Sorry about that. It was probably Boxing Day.
Somebody farted. Right. Those brave enough to venture within the Magic Kingdom, at least those few who returned, spoke of a new king there, a being whose flesh was studded with the features of those he devoured, a being of corruption. He was known as Capricorn, and somehow he had made Magnus his captive.
Bring back the Velcrons.
And taken his throne. Wise men deliberated and came to their conclusions, as they would do, I suppose. During the brief hour of madness that had almost brought 2 kingdoms to war, this being had passed the gates. Capricorn was a harbinger of doom.
I've completely lost the plot. I don't know what's going on here.
It's near the ending, don't worry. Thus, Capra, encompassed in ruin, Crops failed, pestilence ensued. The poor were struck down by disease and plague. Worse though, the peoples of the 8 kingdoms began to whisper hatred against each other once more, and plots were hatched for war. So the call has come to the bravest champions of Capra. 8 are now gathered for this, the greatest challenge in the Gauntlet saga. Will they prevail against Capricorn and drive back his hordes beyond the gates? What gates? Can they prevail, even though the very food they eat may be poisoned, even though there are few they dare trust? For the sake of all Capra, we must hope so. Heavy, that, isn't it?
This is the longest podcast ever.
So heavy, my gosh. Okay, so this is Gauntlet 3 then. A bit heavy, all that. Wow, okay. And unnecessary, completely unnecessary. That's the Gauntlet 3 hyperbole of immense proportions. When the game starts, you get a stripy Gauntlet 3, 2 crap dragons, and some ye olde text on a brown rectangle and yellow. Good old crazy title sequence. That is the title screen. It's a bit naff. Music's good though. And then when you do press fire to get into the game, 1 player or 2 player. Now, I only played this 1 player, and I also played the cartridge adaptation of whatever that is. I don't know if it's the version of... I don't know what it's a version of, but I played that one because I couldn't be bothered with long load times. Or, what is actually the truth, flipping the disc every 30 seconds, which is what you do on the other one. Trust me on that.
Oof.
So once you've got past the stripy Gauntlet 3, which is, again, unnecessary, you'll end up with the actually quite attractive UI, which is like the character selection screen. Now, the characters in this are odd, and there's a little bit of an extension, isn't there, from what they used to be. So in this game, we have 8 characters instead of the traditional 4. The 4 that we start with, of course, are Thor the Warrior. And I won't go through the description, but there's similar descriptions to what we've seen before, and the weird ratings that they've given them. So his armor is his own tough skin. That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah. It just means he's leathery.
So it says, of all men, none are mightier than Thor the Warrior. He hails from the volcanic kingdom, a fierce, inhospitable place, blah, 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 blah. It's Thor. Then there's also Thyra, the Valkyrie, a drowned land in which only those possessed of great strength and magical power survive. She's one of them. She also has poor magic, but she's good with a sword. Okay, say no more. Merlin the Wizard, of course. Few have studied under Magnus, and one of them was the more adept Merlin. So he's one of Magnus's proteges, I guess. So there's Merlin, of course, and Questor the Elf. Everyone remembers Questor the Elf. He's always shooting the food, wasn't he? He's good with leather armor. He has good leather armor. He's got leather, I imagine, gauntlets and probably leather pads on his hands. He's got bungle palms.
pads.
He's got bungle palms. So the question now is the new one, Adrian. It's exciting, isn't it? Petras, the rock man. Not somebody who's in a rock band, as you might think. No.
Oh.
It says, as the first men were said to be made out of clay. No one's ever said that, but okay. So came to Capra a race of living rock who made their home in mountaineers and lived their millennia-long lives in peace. So these are rock people. Possibly AC/DC band members. We don't know for sure, but that's who they are. Anyway, they've got hard skin, which they could get seen to with a bit of Dove, couldn't they? Dove, treat that. You don't walk around with hard skin.
That's just like Thor. Didn't you say Thor had like armor skin?
Yeah, he's actually, no, sorry. He's got, his armor is shield, which is, I'm sorry, no, he has tough skin, but not hard skin. Sorry, yeah. So.
It's all in the adjective.
It is. So it's Petrus the Rockman and his friend, Dracolis, the Lizard Man. I'm sensing a sort of a wee pre-Game of Thrones. Dracolis, rock people, and that all. It's a bit weird, isn't it? The first men, that's all Game of Thronesy language. Anyway, Dracolis was a thief and renegade. He's also a lizard. So I think as a thief, you're going to stick out a bit. Just saying. His armor's chain, anyway, which I thought would have been just lizard skin, but...
Chafy.
And then you've got Blizzard the Iceman. What motivates this redoubtable warrior? Who can say? His crystalline face betrays no emotion, nor does he ever show fear or doubt. Instead, he is always at the forefront of the fight against evil. Unless it's a really sunny day, then he is fucked.
You don't call like humans like Rainy the Man, do you?
No.
Just because they come from Blizzard. It's like, well, it's a snow guy. Okay, Blizzard.
Yeah, it's Blizzard the Iceman. And his armor is ice hard frost. And it says in brackets, it's excellent. Okay. Take your word for it. I wouldn't know. And then there's the more unfortunate and final one of the 8, Neptune, the Merman. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never been comfortable with the Merman idea. He's a merman of the Sea Kingdom, a proud and haughty people. There's a word you don't come across very often. Haughty. He's haughty. Haughty he is. Anyway, he's involved in many of the wars before Magnus came, so he's a bit of a trouble causer. And his armor is robes. Now, he's a fish, essentially. And I'm wondering if he's a merman, are we talking, is he a fish down below? Or is he a fish up above? Is he a fish head or is he fish legs? I don't know.
Or is or the unmentioned one, the fish in the middle?
Could be. I don't know, and I don't want to know.
It's human head, human feet, and just fishy middle bit.
Anyway, I'm bigging all this up for what is essentially not a great experience, really. But the UI is nice when you're selecting that. It's like a dial. You've got nice graphics. The graphics in the game are actually pretty good. And there's a nice sequence to select this. It's got nice animated little bits on it. It's a good thing. It looks nice. The Gauntlet 3 at the top of it, which is off to the left, annoyed me. It did. I can't escape that. I can't help it.
Why?
If anything's centered, because it wasn't centered. It needed to be centered.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's off to the left, and don't do that. But it is a very nice interface. So you pick your warrior or wherever you're going to be out of the 8 archetypes, and then it's into the game you go, and you'll start in this, what is essentially, at least in this particular, you'll be in Kingdom 1. Out of the 8 kingdoms, they are, and I will just list them, I won't describe them, but you can go to the instructions for the in-depth descriptions, a bit like booking.com. So you start in the Tree Kingdom, and then you've got the Mountain Kingdom, the Swamp Kingdom, the Volcanic Kingdom, the Sea Kingdom, the Lost City, the Ice Kingdom, and of course, finally, the Magic Kingdom. It says there, by the way, the kingdom of Magnus, the Wizard Eternal, is strange indeed. Its people live in gingerbread cottages, and yellow brick roads lead to an endless gallery of entertainments. I don't know. I don't know what to make of that, really. Okay, it just seems a bit odd.
No one does.
They would do that.
No one knows what to make of it.
Anyway, so the game starts, and it's a isometric Gauntlet style game, really. And I say Gauntlet style because it's got the word Gauntlet on it. You are in a mostly brown level when you start on level
it's
on
very
Kingdom
brown,
1.
isn't it?
So it's well shaded brown, but there's a lot of brown in there. So you've got muddy brown, brown buildings, brown walls, green trees though, green leaves on the trees, but brown trunks. And the top third, 2/3 of it is really the, I guess the game, and the bottom third is the UI. The UI is basically a picture of the character that you are and your score in kind of a nice design UI. It's not bad, but it is just really an encasement of lots of numbers, score numbers, and your health score. A bit like Gauntlet, your score progresses down. I'll talk about that a little bit more when we do it. And then if you're playing 2-player, which you can only do 1 or 2 player, it is co-op though. And on the right-hand side, of course, is the image of the other player and their score and their details. And of course, on there, you've also got your 5 credits each noted. So when you start the game, you come out of the exit, which made me laugh. I'm like, it's just like he's popped out the exit, and you are in the game. Now, the idea here is to navigate your way around the kingdoms and find some stuff that will gradually help you beat Capricorn at the end of the game. So each of the levels has kind of clues, objects to find, and things. Now, the objects aren't immediately obvious to what they are, but they are described in the instructions of what you sort of need to do. But really, all you really need to do is fight your way through from one level to the next. And some of the levels are hidden, so you've got to kind of mosey around. The game is it's created in kind of an isometric view, which is different to any of the Gauntlet games. And the idea here is that you can sort of move. It's a bit like, it is an isometric game, and it does scroll in kind of 360. It's a bit jerky to scroll in and everything else, but it does scroll in 360. And you control your player with the joystick, running around and shooting with the fire button, which in the case of I played as Thor, so I was throwing the axes around. As you navigate around, there are fences and things that will get in your way. And of course, there are things to collect, as in tradition of Gauntlet, food, potions, and treasure. Also, there are things that will attack you, ghosts, which spawn from spawn points as they do in Gauntlet, but not nearly as frequently and not nearly as many. And there has been an attribution. It has been attributed to those ghosts a little bit more AI or a little bit more intelligence, such as it is. I don't believe that necessarily. I think there's just less of them, and the space is a little bit more cluttered than Gauntlet was. And the idea here is then you make your way around this, really picking up the treasure, shooting at the things, not dying, and then trying to find any kind of clues as to what you might need to do for the rest of the game, other than refer to the instructions for each of the levels. Each of the levels is different and coloured and themed differently. They're all of a type, so they're all of a kind of a tiles, not a tile, but they're kind of a made of isometric constructed blocks, I guess. So there's a background, and then there's like bricks, and they're not badly designed. They don't look too bad, and you do navigate around, like I said, with a bit of jerky scrolling. But that's principally it with this game. So you navigate yourself around, shoot at things, walk across small bridges. The navigated zones, the kingdoms, are quite big in of themselves, and there are multiple exits on some of the levels, and you've got to sort of noodle your way around and not die, and fight your way to the Magic Kingdom, and I guess the weird gingerbread houses that lurk there. But that's principally how this plays. It looks okay. Like I said, graphics are quite good. Your main sprite is a bit medium res, and there's some limitations around that. But mainly, for the most part, the thing that struck me initially with this is that the parts of it feel weirdly unfinished, or at least, at the very least, unpolished in ways. So there's parts that look great, and there's parts that don't. And case in point is that title screen, which had that stripy effect in it, like I said, and that weird English typeface. It just looked like it had been bolted onto something, and I think maybe we'll come back to that kind of notion a little bit. So anyway, Add to that, you've got that character screen and you can choose from them players, and all that bit seems quite nice. And you get into the game and it seems okay when you first start. You think, okay, 8 levels of this, and maybe I can have a go at that. Once you pass that player selection, the game is in multi-directional isometric mode. And I suppose could you say it was unusual for this type of game on the C64? We don't get a lot of isometric games with this level of scope, I suppose, not this kind of thing, not outside of another game space. But like I said, the bottom third UI, top 2/3 main game, there's nothing too unusual about any of the layout or anything like that. And I thought it was actually quite nicely rendered. There's a nice polished look to things overall. There's nice details and shading considering it's all mostly brown on that level. Doesn't look that bad. And your sprite is a little bit stumpy, isn't he? A bit Stumpy Joe. So my thought was that it's a bit medium res, and okay, it's one sprite wide, one sprite high. It's not terrible. I don't know if it's a combo sprite with a bit high res. It looks okay, but they do look like what you've selected, I suppose. If you select the different characters, they do look like that, is what I can say. But they are a bit short and squat, and they control a bit weird as well. So, but it looks okay in that kind of Rambo Commando type vibe. But it's not. Remember, it's isometric, but it's that kind of wander around. It reminded me of Rambo actually a little bit, where you were wandering around and just picking up weapons and doing stuff. That jungle bit of Rambo, a bit like that, but except isometric. Scrolling was a bit jerky, but that's how the camera kind of works into relation to your movement. So you move a bit, scrolls a bit, move a bit, scrolls a bit. And it's a bit frustrating because it doesn't really do it smoothly and it doesn't really keep up with you. So you find yourself a little bit odds with the camera, and that gets a bit disjointing and a bit sort of, I don't know, it just takes you out of the game space a bit, really. Once you set about exploring and finding the treasure, getting the food, shooting the enemies, it's tradition, it's Gauntlet, really, at that point. And those spawning enemies just aim towards you and just get in your way or take health away from you. Your health is ticking away constantly, decreases further as you encounter more enemies. You can, of course, shoot them or avoid them. It's all a part of the quest, isn't it, ultimately, for the exit? So you can explore and continue your quest and complete the requirements for the 8 kingdoms, whatever they may be. So it rolls. Run around, shoot stuff, pick up treasure, find the clues and secrets of defeating Capricorn, and make your way through the kingdoms to do that. The kingdoms are all themed, like I said, and so there is a change in graphics. I thought that was okay. All these are on a separate load, however, kind of a repeated load. I think each level, each part is a load. I don't know how that works outside of the cartridge, but it loads chunks in, I think, and I don't know how impressive that would be if you're on a disc and you're flipping discs every 2 minutes. There's a whole bunch of enemies in this, you'd be pleased to know, Adrian. There's ghosts, poltergeists, emerald crawlers, sorcerers, killer plants, zombies and mummies, mud monsters, dragons, worms, barbarians, crabs, jellyfish, plague dogs, pixies, sharkmen. The boring old sharkmen got a rough end of that one, didn't they? And death. So, right at the end there. Good old death makes an appearance in there. And they do vary in the number of hits they take to kill. And you do have that great opening music in this as well, like I said. There's no in-game music, just sound effects, and that does make it feel way emptier than it should. That combined with fairly sparse kingdoms doesn't really help, does it? So it looks nice on the whole. It plays okay. There's the odd glitch that I noticed, which was a bit weird. I noticed that a few people had commented that, though. But otherwise, it was okay. The controls were never that bad, but the angle you play that in terms of the isometric does make aiming and walking feel arguably weird and more challenging than it needs to be. I sometimes felt that I needed to gauge what angle I was shooting at when I approached things because it didn't feel right. And I think it's because you kind of move more than the 8 directions of isometric in that space, and it just kind of breaks your brain a bit. It would have been better just to keep it to sort of a limited range of directions, I think, and it just feels a bit weird like that. But that's what it is. It's not terrible, I'd say this, but it does take a bit of getting used to, doesn't it, all of that? The enemies or lack of is perhaps more of an issue, really, for me, and that goes right to the core of the main problem I had with Gauntlet 3. Now, Gauntlet, and you might correct me if I'm wrong here, but Gauntlet is fundamentally a shoot 'em up, right? Really. It's an against the odds cascade of enemies that you plow through as you hack and slash your way through dungeons looking for an exit. No more complicated than that, nor does it need to be. The balance, such as it is, comes from the fun of playing multiplayer aspects and the variable strengths and weaknesses of the characters, combined with the notion of collecting keys, potions, and food. Run around, shoot at everything, keep moving, and collect stuff. Don't shoot each other or the food. Simple. The change of visuals for this, the isometric styling and such, places this firmly in more of an RPG territory. And then you add more of a missions and medals type gameplay. So instead of the classic dungeon crawling type idea, you have a backstory and quests and a wider game arc and an ending. For me, that isn't Gauntlet. It's an interesting idea, I suppose, if they had added the RPG things to this. That would have made a nice multiplayer RPG in the tradition of a dungeon type game. Instead, you've got game types that, while thematically linked, I guess, because you've got warriors and Valkyries and stuff, they're different games with different ways of playing. So the isometric world feels more empty. Enemies are more sparse and probably a little smarter, as in they don't just aim for you en masse. And you need to find stuff to get to the end. Those are great quests for an RPG, but for Gauntlet, You just need to hack and slash and find treasure and stuff and stay alive and get out of each level as quick as possible. That was Gauntlet. So this is kind of breaking the idea of what Gauntlet fundamentally is. And that gameplay then leaves it at odds with the core of Gauntlet. And that, amongst all the great music and the UI and graphics, was ultimately the main issue. I played the cartridge, like I said, so there's no loading, but the disc version looked to me like it was a pain in the ass from what I've read. And it would have never have worked on tape, I can tell you that. But this felt to me like an unfinished RPG that had a Gauntlet brand thrown on it at some point and had Gauntlet stuff attached to it. And it didn't work as a concept because I like Gauntlet the way it was. I like running around in that nice view, shooting at stuff as those characters, just clustering around loads and loads of spawning enemies on mass rooms full of ghosts. I like that. I like going in there and just battling my way through, and I like that idea. It's one of the reasons I like that vampire game that you was raving about, that mobile
Vampire
one.
Survivors.
It's why I like Vampire Survivors, because that's all it is. It's just another Gauntlet variation. In fact, it's even simpler, that one. But there's a game in there that you could just get into and just play, and it doesn't require lots of, well, I've got to think about now the Velcrons and the Capricorn and the Magic Kingdoms. So the Gauntlet didn't need any of that. So it's a shame, really, because this had the ingredients of being quite a good RPG, had they stuck to that and put in the RPG elements. But because it doesn't have that, it's like looking at an RPG wearing Gauntlet trousers, and it makes no sense. So for me, it felt like it was the wrong game delivered in the wrong way, and not the right game delivered in the right way. So the worst of both worlds. It's not Gauntlet enough to be Gauntlet. It's not RPG enough to be a proper RPG. And therefore, it felt to me like it was just missing everything, and they filled all that space with loads of pointless story arc nonsense that made no sense to anybody anyway. Who cares? Why would Thor have met a merman? I don't want to know the story behind that. Nobody does. All right. It was probably an innocent mistake and he deeply regrets it. But there we go. But I don't know. I didn't like it. What did you think?
I'm straight. I'm in complete agreement. The main thing about the diagonal scrolling, this gave me a headache. Across and down or up. It goes across and it doesn't scroll diagonally properly. It goes across and then down, or across and then up. And I was like, it's just, I can't walk at diagonals. So it made me feel seasick. As you said, it's a very brown game. I've pretty much written what you've written, just what Prayseed. I'm not sure the change of viewpoint was really needed for Gauntlet. It all seems kind of empty. The angles are all wrong when shooting in a diagonal. You think you're going a diagonal, and you go, which way am I shooting? It's all off. Like I said, it's just you need to be one line higher than you think to kill enemies when you're shooting horizontally as well. I think if I shoot here, I'll kill it, and it doesn't. And so blowing up the spawners and stuff, tricky than it needs to be. There is some decent presentation. The character select screen is nice. There is some good music from the Follins. That's all good at the front end. I didn't mind the Rasterbar Gauntlet logo as much as you did. It was fine. The visuals, although brown at the beginning, they're pretty decent. And I've written the same like you. If a little squat, the character portraits are nice. Just the fact that it's weird that this never got officially released. Bit of a strange sting in the tail for this one. But I think, and like I've written pretty much the same as you, the main issue with this, it doesn't feel like Gauntlet.
Yep.
It's not Gauntlet. So it's not a Gauntlet game. And I've written like exactly what you've written. I can't help but feel if they had just gone with some generic fantasy title and dropped the license, this would have been better, because it doesn't have the feel of Gauntlet, so the license seems wasted, and it brings baggage to the game that it didn't really need.
Yep.
I'll tell you what this would have been better as, Wizardry 2.
Yeah.
Because it looks like Wizardry. It's brown. It's isometric.
Yeah. He's probably wearing a welder's hat as well.
A welder's hat at some point. But you'd have made this into Wizardry 2. It'd have been, oh yeah, that's quite good. But it's not Gauntlet. There's not enough enemies. No. There's not the manic craziness of the whole thing that Gauntlet has going for it when you're just looking at a screen full of 1,000 sprites and there's just everything everywhere. It's not terrible. There's some impressive tech in there. The scrolling didn't matter, though, and it's not a Gauntlet game. And that's its biggest sin. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, we're in complete agreement. Do you know what I thought? At a certain point, because when you wander around that level 1 or 2, and you're knee deep in the brown, which is never a thing you want to be. When you do come across the exits, if that sign instead of saying exit said in, and you went in there, you'd have expect there to be characters to talk to, wouldn't you?
Yes,
and things like that.
Exactly.
It's got that vibe about it, and it would have been quite interesting if they did that, but they didn't.
Yeah, or Firelord 2, anything like that. There's loads of games with this sort of fantasy style. Yeah. Even if this was, what was the other one? Fairlight 2. Yeah.
It's of that. It's of that genus, isn't it? It's what it ain't is Gauntlet.
Well, it's not. It's Gauntlet. No, you make this into a bit more adventure game. Even if this had been Druid 3 and then it swaps it to this style, this is more in common with Druid than Gauntlet, because Druid's more adventure and less panicky.
Absolutely true. Yeah, that's a really good thought. Actually, yeah, I agree with that. So does this mean it's gauntless? Is that how we say this?
I think, yes, yeah.
Is it gaunt-like?
No, it's gauntlet free.
Yeah, very good.
There you go.
What it ain't is gauntlet, yeah. Exactly that.
It's not Gauntlet 3, it's Gauntlet 3. Yeah, there you go. It's not the final fight. That's just stupid. There was no final fight. Gauntlet wasn't about anything.
No, the deeper dungeons went on forever.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Anyway, that's Gauntlet 3. It's not Gauntlet game.
No.
Let's move along. We've still got one more game in this part. And that game, well, we were wondering about this one. This is Lupo Alberto, the video game. Okay. The second game this month from Italy. It is. I can't recall if we've ever had any before this month. Have we had any Italian games? It's like, I know we've had Spanish. We've had loads of other parts of Europe. We've had German. I know we've had stuff from Eastern Europe and things like that. I was racking my brain to think of some games from Italy. Maybe our listeners can tell us. I can't remember. We seem to have just...
I don't remember any. Any.
In fact, there's 2 in this episode.
There is.
Anyway, so I don't know. Why the video game part? Why is this Lupo Alberto the video game? Well, Lupo Alberto. What is Lupo Alberto? It is a famous Italian comic book series.
Yes.
According to the Wikipedia, this was created by Guido Silvestri in 1974, and it details the adventures of Lupo Alberto, a blue wolf. Lupo Alberto takes the shape of the common man who has a goal in life and a certain amount of bad luck. Alberto, a resident of the Mackenzie farm, always tries to steal a hen named Martha, who is his girlfriend. Why does he need to steal her? But Moses, a sheepdog, is the obstacle to his plans and does everything to stop him. The conflict between Alberto and Moses were the subject of the first strips of the series. Classic comic book stuff. It's that kind of stuff. I'd never heard of it, I have to say. This has never come across my transom, but it's not saying a lot. I'm not into Italian comics. Interestingly, though, again, according to the wiki, the Lupo Alberto strips are especially popular among teenagers and have spawned a rich merchandising franchise, including school diaries and greeting cards. As a consequence of its appeal on the youth, the Lupo Alberto character was used in the 1990s for a massive anti-AIDS campaign promoted by the Italian Ministry of Public Health, emphasizing safe sex and the use of condoms. There you go.
Okay. Okay. Good old Lupo.
Good old Lupo, yeah. He's practicing safe sex with Martha, I guess. There you go. A wolf and a hen. Anyway.
When?
Anyway, this game is published by Idea Software. We'll see some more of them actually in this episode, I think. Maybe well. And it was Paolo Galimberti. Again, we'll see more of him. He did the code and the music for this. The visuals here were by Luca Strariotto and Nicola Bentolo. I'm very sorry if I butchered those names, but they are what they are. So that's who's done this. So what the hell is this game? According to the back of the box, there's not much in the way of instructions for this. The back of the box says, lead Lupo Alberto and Martha, it says, in a quest for their lost love. 1 or 2 player action in a frantic platform game. 180 screens with lots of graphics, characters, bonuses, and surprises. And a new Lupo Alberto comic. The instructions don't give much more on the game itself. There's a double-page spread, though. Explains who Lupo is, I've already said, who the artist is, and the various characters in the comic. I'm not going to read them here. You want to know all about them, we'll link to the instructions. They're on...
find them, yeah.
We'll link to them. Go and read about them all yourself. It's just, what it is. So the game is a 2D multi-directional scrolling platformer set across various levels. Okay, there's a loading screen showing Lupo in his blue glory. Looks just like the cover of the game. It's just a close-up of Lupo's face.
Blue glory sounds like a dirty movie from the 70s.
Well, considering that what this was, standing up for, it would surprise me. Who knows?
Yeah, true.
Cartoony, I guess. Then when it loads, we've got some options. There's a jolly title screen. It allows us to play as Lupo, Marta the hen, play a 2-player game, and turn the music off or on. Now, interestingly, 2-player mode is a simultaneous 2-player game.
That's curious.
Yeah, which I'm not sure we've seen in a platformer before this. Have we seen 2 players in the same point? Like New Super Mario Brothers and those kind of things? It's like that.
I don't think we have.
Well, this is that. This has got it. This has got 2 players playing a platformer at the same time.
Pretty tidy, that.
Yeah, it's quite good, isn't it? And nothing springs to... I was trying to think, did Garn Assisted didn't do it? I was trying to think of other platformers where there's 2 on screen at once. And you can't... When you go to one side, the screen won't scroll until the other player starts moving. So it keeps them plugged on. Yeah. Anyway, pressing one of the F keys. It's F1 for one player, F3 for Marta, F5 for the two-player mode, or on F7 to turn the music on or off. So it starts the game mode in whatever you want. The levels stay the same no matter which mode, and don't really matter. It has to load in the first level. It's a multi-load. Every level is split into 2 parts, each one loading separately, and there are 10 levels in total, so that's 20 separate loads to contend with. Okay. Once the first part is loaded in, you agree with a rather basic-looking left-to-right scrolling platformer. You control Lupo with left and right to move, up to jump, and it's got the Mario-style control, so the longer you hold up, the higher you jump. Just tap it, you do a low jump. As you progress, it's classic, basic left-to-right scrolling to start with. There are platforms to jump on, like hills to climb. It feels a bit more like Mario 2, I think, than Super Mario Brothers. As you progress, you'll see various other members of the Lupo comic appear. Like rabbits, chickens, cows, ducks, pigs. It's farmyard animals, basically, that, all those things from the comic, if you go read them. And again, it's classic Mario style contact here. So contact from the side or below with any of these, they cost Lupo a life. This is showed on the UI at the top of the screen. So the game window itself takes up about 4/5 of the screen. The UI at the top shows your number of lives. This is for both characters, even in one player. Your scores, the high score, and the time left to complete the level. I think you get 200 seconds. However, Lupo can knock the enemies out by stomping on their heads. So just like Mario, you can jump on the top of stuff. This has obviously taken a lot of cues from the Mario games. Some enemies will take more than one stomp, though, to get rid of in a nice little touch. So if you knock them off the platform, if they're even on the lowest floor, they kind of sort of fall below, but they kind of hang on. Kind of like what we saw in that age-old Space Panic, where you'd knock someone down in a hole and they'd kind of hold on, then they'll climb back out. Then you got to knock them again. So some of them take 2 or 3 hits to actually knock out of the actual level, which is, that's a good touch. It's nice. You can't just sort of... it's just not one touch. You got to sort of come back if you want to do that. Because as you walk over certain parts of the landscape, fruit leap from the ground at your footprint, at your feet, and you could collect these for points. That's how you collect points: killing animals, knocking the other animals out, and collecting the fruit, which sort of appear all over the place. There are also power-ups to collect. These are not mentioned in the manual. So watching a sort of playthrough on YouTube and sort of in playing it myself, I noted there was a speed up you could collect. There's a higher jump. There's a boxing glove weapon, a milk jug of some description. If you pick up a weapon, you can press fire to sort of fire that weapon off, and you use that to sort of attack the other animals as well. There could be more. I don't know. There's nothing listed in the manual, so who knows? As you progress, the level starts to open up, asking you to traverse both upwards and downwards to get to the end. So you then start to go up and down. It's not just left to right; it's up and down as well. Getting to the end of the first part loads in the second. But getting to the end of the second part, so this is the end of sort of, say level 1, section 2, reveals a comic panel, because you see it at the back of the manual. There's 10 comic strips, 3-panel comic strips, and each one has the last panel missing. You complete each full level, and that reveals the final panel for each of these strips. That's how you understand the comic. So it says there's a new comic strip. That's how you get the full comic, by completing all the levels. They're in Italian, but underneath each one is the English translation and the German translation, I think. So you can read them. You can see what they are. That's all right. Which is novel, I guess. I don't think I've seen that much in, sort of a bit cross-media stuff going on.
No, it's an interesting take.
Yeah. I found them hard to read, though, on the C64. I don't know I couldn't actually read the text. It's like they've been scanned in, and they weren't particularly well scanned in, so I'm not quite sure. It's a bit tricky,
didn't they?
Yeah, they were
medium
like, what's that say? And really, that's about it. This is up. Sometimes it scrolls up, sometimes it scrolls left to right, sometimes it goes up to down, and it's just get through the level, jumping over platforms and things like that. It's a very by the numbers platformer, heavily influenced, as I said, by the Mario games of the time, but it lacks the finesse and design of those games. The visuals are very simple, with simple sprites, and with little to no dithering. We've come to expect a level of dithering in our games these days. These are very simple block colors, outlines. Just they're not got outlines, but they're just blocky medium res sprites. That's what they are. They're animated okay. They're not terrible. So the visuals themselves, like I said, not terrible. The backgrounds are basic. They do a decent job of conveying the characters from the comic, I guess. But they're at mid-80s at best, from what we've come to sort of express. And like I said, progression is simple enough. There are the usual platforming conventions, blocks that move up and down, left to right, jumping over them. There are spike pits, bridges, all that kind of stuff that you kind of expect. There are some platforms that sort of sync when you're on them, which is quite a nice touch. It's very run-of-the-mill for a platformer. It just is what it is. They come in a bit more complicated patterns as you progress and you move in different directions, but it's just go left, go up or down, complete the level, find it. There's not really that much else to it. It moves at a decent pace. The scrolling's smooth. There's no bugs that I saw. It's pretty well coded. It's all solid. And the inclusion, like I said, of the 2-player simultaneous mode is a really nice touch that not even the Mario games would include for quite some time. I think it was the new Super Mario Brothers, maybe on the DS or the Wii U or the Wii, possibly. I think maybe in the Wii versions that sort of actually first had that. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure whether other games did it as well before this for them. But anyway, no, the problems here are the little things that great after a while. The first one, and this is actually the main one, you can get away with it for a little bit, is you need to be too close to the edge of the screen to move it.
Yes.
We've seen this before in other games, but okay, just go, if you haven't played it for a little while, just bring it up on YouTube, go look at Super Mario Brothers, 1985 Super Mario Brothers, see how Mario pushes the screen and where Mario is when you're moving. He's just to the left of the center of the screen and you're going right. Loads. Why is the best way to do it? Because it gives you plenty of space and affordance to see and react to enemies and platforms that are coming on from the right. Okay,
Absolutely.
It's simple. The more space, the more time you have to react. There's a reason why in shoot 'em ups that go left to right, your spaceship is on the left because you need time to react. In this, you have to be almost right across to the right to push the screen, and that's a pain. That is annoying because Lupo, you're a quarter width of the screen away from the right hand side to start the scroll happening. You get no warning of oncoming enemies and platforms. And it's worse when moving up or down, where Lupo has to literally be at the top or bottom of the screen to move the screen up or down. And again, that's a real problem because early in the first level, you have to jump up a series of platforms. There's one bit where you're on a moving platform that you have to then, when it gets to the top, you have to jump up. You can't see the platform that you're jumping up onto. And that sinks. And then you quickly got to jump up to the left. And there's a series of little platforms you go up. And when you get to the top of there's an enemy on one that you can't see because you're right at the top of the screen. So you can't time your jump to get past it. And that's really painful. You lose a life. And so that's, because there's nothing you can do about it. If you couple that with the fact that the game is just a bit lifeless and dull. There's music because you're playing through it, which is all right. It's not really that interesting to play. You can just run through the first 2 levels once you figure out where the enemies are. You'll lose the odd life, but you can probably make it through because of the issue. Because you'll lose life because of the issue of the scrolling. But there's very little challenge in this, and I just thought, I'm just going to leg it, and so I just ran. And it just gets a bit dull because there's no real challenge. And it's not like you could speedrun it or anything by sort of holding down a button to sprint. You're just sort of meandering along. The challenge here comes not from interesting level design, but by not being able to see the levels properly. And when you have to jump between moving platforms, with the screen not revealing them properly, this issue gets even worse. And so that's where this falls down a little bit. It's well put together. I'm not going to be too harsh on this, though. This would have been better suited at this point. This would have been better suited as a budget price. If this had come in at £3, I'd have been like, yeah, okay, I get that. This is the £3. There's a lot of levels here. I think that this would have been a great proposition at this point in time. For £11, this loses. You could get CJ's Elephant Antics.
Yes, you could.
For £3. That's a far better game. Yeah. Even without the 2-player game, that's a better designed, more enjoyable, tougher, but it feels more challenging. It's just a better game, and that's in the budget range. And I can't imagine what other quality platformers that we've seen that are in the budget range these days by this point. So I think £11 is too much for this.
Yeah,
it's not terrible. The music is okay throughout. It's nothing special. It's jolly and it suits the type of game, so that's not a problem. I think if they had fixed the scrolling issue, all the things they took from Mario, the one thing I really want to take from is where you place him in the screen. This would have been a lot more enjoyable. They didn't know, and so I don't like platform games where I cannot see what is coming up. It's one of the first things I tell my students. We make platform games, you make platform games when you're sort of teaching students how to do stuff because they're pretty easy to do, especially in modern engines. And a lot of them I see leaps of faith, moving too close to the edge of the screen, things like that. It's like, don't do that. Put your character back. Allow the player to see what you need to be able to plan. This game shows why that is. Because if you can't plan, we've seen this loads of games, you can't react. It lessens your enjoyment of it. And so the challenge then doesn't come, like I said, from the level design. It comes from being able to do it. And it gets a bit boring because you stop, start.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I found. I think maybe, what did it get? It got 36%. That's perhaps a bit harsh. I think it's
so.
I think it's a 2/3 game. It's 50 to 60s for me. But I think this would have been better received as a budget game. But there we are. What did you think?
Yeah, exactly the same. I quite enjoyed what it was. It felt like a very simple game. It felt almost like an entry-level Mario.
Yeah.
Very, very sort of what they call it, the first Nintendo system, the NES, is it? The first
NES,
one? Yeah. Very NES-like approach to the kind of idea. But just those flaws, you can't escape them. It scrolls too late, and it's too easy to get killed by enemies and things you couldn't see coming because it's unfortunate. I found when I was trying to navigate upwards and downwards, it all got a bit silly at one point because suddenly I'm jumping upwards and screen scrolls and so there's an enemy on top of me. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit one of those. And those really let it down. The construction of it is pretty impressive and it is quite nice in the way that it works. So it's a complete experience, but it is very basic. It looks kind of basic. There's not much going on the screens. I spent most of the time just jumping over chickens or whatever the hell they are.
Yeah.
There's not a great deal to do. You can jump on them as well, but there's not a great deal to do. And they pop back as well, which is a bit annoying. I don't know. It's just a dumbed down Mario, which would have been great if this had have been $1.99, like exactly as you say. But because they've asked for $10.99 for this, it's way too high. And even with the dumbed down logic and the visuals being what they are, and it is bug free, it's too much to ask for a game like that when you've got CJs out there for way less. So I think I agree with you exactly, though. I think that 36% is a bit silly. This is in the 60s to 70s all day long, even at that price. I mean, had this been $1.99 and had they just addressed those couple of things, exactly as you say, we're in complete agreement. I just felt it made a game that feel a bit empty and endless, which it didn't need to be. It didn't need to be those things. A little bit of extra consideration, a bit more experience, and you wouldn't have done that. But we'll see a return of this kind of game logic with another one of their games fairly soon. But I liked what it was. It's just I thought it was a little bit too basic and it had some fundamental design errors that just made it too punishing to be much fun. And at that price tag, nah. And I don't even know where this would have even been released in the UK, but there you go. I thought it was all right, but it's nowhere near as good as some of the other competitors, and it's certainly not as good as anything else at that price tag. You're not going to jump out playing Genesis anytime soon, are you? Really? Or CJs
or Flimbo's Quest or things like that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Any of those, you're not going to jump out playing those for this. So there you go.
No, there you go. And that's it. That's it for the first part. We've had 2 games there, Gauntlet 3 and Lupo Alberto. We're going to go away. We're going to take a quick break. And we're going to come back. We'll look at, well, frankly, minimal TV that was going on. There's not much, but we'll look at the TV that was going on in June 1991. So please do stay with us. And we are back. This is June 1991. What was going on in TV land? Not much. 16th of June, BBC One airs Cry Freedom, Richard Attenborough's acclaimed film about South African journalist Donald Woods. It is shown in 2 parts, with the second aired on the 23rd of June.
Seems a bit weird that they did that. And it's quite a long gap as well. It's not like it was part 1 on the 16th and part 2 on the 17th. That's a good 6-day gap.
It's a week, 7 days.
Why would they split it into 2 weekly parts?
I don't know. Is it a long film?
It's 2 hours 37.
That's not even an end game.
No, and they showed Gandhi the full thing when they showed the BBC showed Gandhi. They showed it all 3 hours, whatever it is of it.
Oh, I don't know.
That's really strange. I wonder if there was. Sometimes they did that if there was an event around that time, and I'm wondering, was there an event in the middle of all that? Was there some football thing maybe, or I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose of having a serious film like Cry Freedom if you're going to put some. It's a knockout world championships in the middle of it, but okay.
You took me all down about like apartheid and everything and stuff going on in South Africa, and then it's like, oh no, he's fallen over.
Exactly. No, I don't know why they did that. I mean, it's a good film, but I don't know why they did that.
No, I don't. Maybe it was because on the 18th of June, BBC Two aired the concluding episode of David Lynch's drama, Twin Peaks.
Yes, the sadly passed away David Lynch, of course, now. Passed away recently, didn't he?
He did pass away, yeah. A very sad loss.
Gary was crying himself to sleep over that one. He was quite upset.
He was in his red room with the backward dwarf.
The backward dancing dwarf.
Yeah.
That's the term we prefer.
Backward dancing dwarf, sorry. You know what I meant. A backward walking dwarf.
But yes, but it was, I mean, you would have been, was you glued to that at that point? Or was this the ending after the ending kind of thing?
No, I mean, well, yeah, this would have been the end of season 2, I'm guessing, because we talked about season 2 starting. So this would have been the end of season 2. I was still watching it to the very end, and like because the end of season 2 is great. It's like a proper like oh my god, what's happened? Which then would lead into season 3, which we got a few years back.
Right.
So it was actually a proper like cliffhanger. And then and then it took, I don't know, what was it, 25, 30 years,
something
25,
like that,
30 years to get thingy. And then they spent 20 episodes not addressing that cliffhanger or sorting it out. Just, good Lord. But no, the ending was a bit of a return to form. It was a good ending, but it was highly frustrating to say the least.
So where does the film fit into all that? Is the film after the TV show, in between those? Yeah,
the film came out later. Firewalk with Me is after this. Well, it was released after this, but it's the last 7 days of Laura Palmer's life. So it's set before the series.
Yeah, because Mark Kermode rates that as one of the greatest horror movies of all time.
Yeah, I can certainly agree. It's quite brutal and horrible in places. But yeah, and it is brilliant. I think Gary and I went to Whitgift to see it, and we were both very happy to have done that. It was really very good. I mean, the film starts quite like obviously the film starts with someone putting a sledgehammer through a TV.
So that's how you start things.
Which is a message to like this is not on TV anymore. It's like quite. It's not very subtle, but like okay, all right. But no, it's excellent. If you watch Firewalk with Me is great. That's a great film.
Oh, cool.
But I'm sure we may actually reach that. I don't know when that came out actually, whether that was 92 or 93. So I'm not sure if we'll actually be still going when that actually releases, but maybe we will. But yeah, good film. Good film. Good series. Just went off the boil a bit. 20th of June, though, this is quite bleak, isn't it?
Horrible.
Yeah, the murder of Harry Collinson, the planning officer. This is weird. I mean, I'd never heard of this. So
I had heard of it, so I remembered it.
Yeah, so the planning officer Derwent Side District Council takes place at Buttsfield, County Durham, while television news crews are filming for a news item about a planning dispute. At the time of the murder, the Derwent Side District Council is involved in the dispute with Albert Dryden over the erection of a building by Dryden on Greenbelt land without planning permission. As television crews are filming, Dryden aims a handgun, a .455 Webley Mark IV revolver at Collinson and shoots him dead. As the journalists and council staff flee, Dryden opens fire again, wounding television reporter Tony Belmont and police constable Stephen Campbell. Dryden is convicted of Collinson's murder following a trial in April the following year. He's also convicted of the attempted murder of council solicitor Michael Dunstan and the wounding of Campbell and Belmont and sentenced to life imprisonment. And this is all on YouTube. We'll put a link in. Be warned. It's
horrible.
Yeah, it's not pleasant. But Christ, I mean, I watched this like Jesus.
Yeah, I remember when it happened, and I remember seeing because it was. I remember when it was on Look North because it was them that was like regional TV that was filming it, and the guy just pulls out a gun and where the last words that the poor Harry Collinson chap says from District Council says, "Anyone filming them with that gun?" Because obviously, and he makes a point of saying it, and then with that, the guy cocks the gun and blam, and shoots the guy dead, and after that, it's just people running. So if you don't actually see anybody, for the sake of people's imaginations, you don't see anybody get shot like in a movie or anything like that. You don't. It's not shown that way. Yeah, but it's not. It is effectively somebody shooting somebody live, and it isn't. It's not one for it's one for the stronger stomachs, but it's just these things never happen on the news. So when they do, it's like wow, that's quite crazy. And I remember at the time,
very rarely happen in the UK. That's the thing. It's the UK. We don't have guns. No,
it's just strange that he pulls that out, and obviously the guy's got mental health problems of a serious magnitude, but. Which they obviously maybe underestimated. I don't know. I'm not making excuses for a murderer. But whatever happened, poor Harry Collinson and everything else, it's not what you expect to see. And it's still now is shocking.
I was amazed at the professionalism of the presenter who, when he runs off, and you don't realise he does his piece to camera sort of thing. He goes, "Oh yeah, I was going to have to go. I've just been shot in the arm, by the way, so I'm going to go get this sorted out."
Yeah, in the background, you see the policeman walking past who's also been shot.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, it's just a horrible thing to see.
Yeah, unpleasant. But that was it really for TV in June 1990. Apart from some new shows, there were some new shoys on a less bleak tone. In 2nd of June, there was The Black Velvet Gown.
Right.
Have you heard of it? This was this is based on a novel by Catherine Cookson.
Oh, there you go. That's why I would never have bothered with it.
No, I bet my mum watched it because she loved Catherine Cookson books. Yeah. She read them all, so she would have probably watched that.
I had an auntie that was well into that.
It did win an international Emmy for best drama.
I didn't even know they did international Emmys, but that's good. It's good that it won that.
Yeah, it's good. 3rd of June was In Suspicious Circumstances.
Oh, that show.
In Suspicious Circumstances, a British true crime drama television series produced by Granada. It's reenactments of historical crimes introduced by Edward
Really
Woodward.
strange. It is, honestly, it's Crime Watch mixed with Time Team.
Yeah, what a strange thing this was.
It's like bullshit. It's like watching Bullshit or Not. It's exactly that. It's Bullshit or Not, but with Edward Woodward.
Yep. It's so odd because we'll link to an episode of this on YouTube and just watch it and go, what were they thinking?
I'm Edward Woodward. Was the Loch Ness Monster, in fact, a 60-foot sea serpent from Scotland?
Did I take this job for a quick book?
It's exactly that. It's that show. It's just a British or an ITV version of Bullshit or Not. It's that show. And it's weird that it's got Edward Woodward in it because he must be fresh off doing the Equalizer after this. So what a weird step down that was.
Well, did he take that job for a quick book? I think so.
But I forget that Edward Woodward, of course, is also in that one of the Cornetto trilogy movies, isn't he? He's in the one in with the police constable in it where he goes
Hot
to the
Fuzz.
village. He's in Hot Fuzz, isn't he? He's one of the villagers in Hot Fuzz. I think it's one of the last films he ever did, actually.
I think, yeah. And obviously, of course, he's Wicker Man, isn't he? He's the Wicker Man.
He famously, yes, Sergeant Howie in The Wicker Man. Yes, he certainly is. Good old Sergeant Howie.
Howie? Howie?
Howie was a rock.
3rd of June. Hope it rains. Good Lord. When her mother dies, independent but unemployed Jace goes to live with her cantankerous godfather, who runs a dilapidated wax museum in a seedy English seaside resort.
God's sake.
It's a sitcom.
Of course it is. Yeah, it sounds hilarious. What is it with these bleak... I mean, there's comedy and tragedy, I get that, but these are just tragedy. It's all tragedy and very little comedy.
Yeah, I don't know what this was.
Where's the fun? What possible fun can there be in a dilapidated wax museum, apart from seeing bad wax museum exhibits?
Yeah, the clip I saw was she sat on a chair and it wasn't very good.
What, the chair wasn't, or the clip of the trailer? That was the
trailer. It wasn't very good. She made some comment and then canned laughter happened.
Yeah, this trailer's rubbish. This chair won't work. End communication.
That looks nothing like Adolf Hitler.
Dear.
Dreadful stuff. 6th of June, GBH.
Aye.
This was a bit controversial, bit of controversy around this.
It was really controversial at the time.
7-part British television drama written by Alan Bleasdale. It's described by Bleasdale as one caring liberal madman's odyssey through the appalling farce of life in Britain today. Protagonist Michael Murray, played by Robert Lindsay, is a hard left Labour leader of a city council in the north of England. And Jim Nelson, played by Michael Palin, who's the headmaster of a special school. In normal parlance, the initials GBH refers to the criminal charge of grievous bodily harm. Bleasdale claimed, though, that the actual stood for Great British Holiday. Yeah. Controversy came because Murray appears to be based on Derek Hatton, the former deputy leader of Liverpool City Council, which lots of people thought it was. And after the first episode was aired, Channel 4 declined to provide preview tapes for rain instalments to Merseyside police, who were concerned the programme could affect Hatton's court case regarding corruption. Strange.
Right, strange.
Bleasdale downplayed the connection, leading Hatton to comment, "The only person in the world who does not seem to think that Michael Murray is me is Alan Bleasdale."
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I found there was a program on that was around that time called Right to Reply, which was one of those shows where people wrote in and complained, or people were, not so much people complaining about TV shows, or people looking into things like that controversy. And there's an actual episode all about that. And it is quite interesting because they do speak to Derek Hatton about GBH and about all the corruption thing. And then just recently, Derek Hatton's been in the press again because of long-standing corruption allegations. So it just shows that things never really change, do they?
No, they don't. The weird thing about that was it was hosted by Rory McGrath.
It was strange, wasn't it, that it was him?
Yeah, because he was playing like dead straight. Normally Rory McGrath was in things like Who Dares Wins and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally.
And comedy shows like Chelmsford 1, 2, 3, and suddenly he's just doing this
deadpan, dead serious. Yeah,
I'm like, that's very odd. 10th of June, Soldier happened.
Yeah.
For 7 series. So this was basically ran for 7 seasons, 82 episodes, featured the daily lives of a group of soldiers in A Company, 1st Battalion, the King's Fusiliers, as a fictional British Army infantry regiment. It went on forever. My mum always watched this. This gave birth to Robson and Jerome.
It did. It certainly did.
The Housewife's favourite of the mid-90s.
Well, yeah, they released singles and music went to the charts because of this.
Yeah, they did thingy, didn't they? The Righteous Brothers, didn't they?
Yeah, Unchained Melody, yeah.
Unchained Melody, the pair of them, yeah.
A couple of others,
I think, yeah. So, but then I always find it weird that then Jerome would go on to be Bronn in Game of Thrones.
Yes, he did. And Robson went on to be Grantchester in Grantchester. I think Somebody got the short straw, though, didn't they? I think.
Yeah, true.
Or the worst their agent, I think.
Although Robson Green was in a particularly good sort of cop show of the late sort of 90s called The Wire, or The Wire in the Blood, I think it was.
Yeah, okay.
It was a British one, which was that's actually pretty good, actually.
I found a video clip of Soldier Soldier. The opening credits look like a mixture of the Antiques Roadshow meeting Dallas.
It's like loads of pretty women and then Bron.
He just pops up out of the bush at one point and goes, hello. And it's like music, it's like, du-du, du-du, du-du. It's like, it doesn't go at all.
No, it doesn't. It's really odd.
Weird.
Yeah. It's like lots of British soldiers suddenly, but all the women in it are really pretty good-looking women.
Yes, they are. Well, Robertson and Jerome aren't going to accept anything less.
And that's true, sort of thing. They'd fire their agents. Speaking of Hitler, 11th of June, there was Selling Hitler.
Strange thing, that.
What was this? Do you know what it was?
Comedy drama miniseries about the Hitler Diaries hoax, and was based on Robert Harris's 1986 book, Selling Hitler, the story of the Hitler Diaries. I found an interview with Robert Harris on the actual Selling Hitler thing from The Guardian, and like an interview with him, which we can put in the show notes. I don't know much more about it. By this point, these shows are simply not... I'm not watching these things on TV. I don't know what I'm watching, but it ain't that.
No, it's really not. We're just watching films at this point, aren't we?
Well, I don't think I'm watching a lot of TV at this point.
No, I don't think we're not. So by June, we're 18. You know, we're out and about and doing.
We're out and about. Probably, I've got a more Amiga now for games and stuff like that. I'm doing music on the Amiga now and all that sort of stuff. So no, I'm just not watching a lot of. Yeah. Certainly not sat watching any of this TV.
And I think by this point as well, hadn't we got the band together?
Yeah, by 91 we would have done, yeah.
So we'd been actually practicing, because we practiced most nights, didn't we?
We practiced most nights, on a Sunday especially, yeah. Lugging that bloody great amp all the way to youth centre.
Yeah, true. Finally, just to round out the TV, I told you what a lot. 30th of June is Family Pride.
Oh.
I don't think this is a show that was shown on Yorkshire, so I don't remember
it. I don't remember it.
It was a British soap opera produced by Central Television. It ran for about a year. It was written by Mahmoud Jamal and Barry Simmer. Centred on the lives of three Asian families living in Birmingham: the Beddies, the Rizvis, and the Lai. It was produced by. It just didn't get shown in Yorkshire. I've got nothing to say about it. It's like, it is what it is.
No, I didn't see it. I mean, I watched I've got the first few episodes are on YouTube. We'll put them in the show notes if you fancy it. It's ambitious. I'll give it that. I mean, this is a regional TV soap opera based around, a representation of a minority that didn't get a lot of TV at all. And if they did, it was horrible, stereotype, cliche TV. So this is actually a shot of normal life in the arm, which is great to see that somebody like Central Television was kind of trying to embrace that a little bit. Because to this point, even if you look at all of the core soap operas to this point, your Crossroads, for your regional ones, but your EastEnders, your Coronation Streets, all the others, it's all white people with and they have the token minority families in there, but they all tend to be horribly cliched minority families. And they paved the way a little bit with EastEnders. They did sort of broaden it a little bit, because they had Ali in there, didn't they, originally, and they had a few other different minorities in there, which again, it's just that in the context of UK TV in the 90s, it was trying to be a bit more diverse. This is the most diverse thing I think I'd seen, other than the Asian Network, but I didn't actually watch it at the time. I wouldn't have watched a soap opera anyway. It wouldn't have been certainly something we'd have watched, but I was impressed when I saw how run of mill normal life Birmingham it was representing, considering that was simply a view you didn't see on TV at all up to that point anywhere. Not in UK TV anyway.
No, very not. And there you go. That's it. That's TV. Not much doing. Not much
on, is there? Not much June. No. So maybe the summer was quite nice, and I don't know. There's no big events because there's no great big things happening. Don't know. Isn't it weird? We didn't go to. I'm just thinking we must have just been out. We did go out quite a bit in the summer.
Yeah. We did.
So we was out. We was busy at this point. I think, like you said, we had a steady stream of pirated videos coming in, so we were watching a lot of them. Yeah. We were watching recordings of Simpsons and stuff like that, playing a lot of Amiga games, doing a lot of Amiga-y stuff, and this is the beginnings of things like Apocalypse and some of the fanzine that we did and other stuff. We were probably doing that around this time, I'd have thought, or heading towards it at rate knots. You would have been getting prepped for college, I think, at this point, or second year, maybe.
Yeah, I think. We were 91, 93, so I would have just been.
Getting prepped for the summer. You'd have been applying and going for interviews and stuff like that.
We were definitely playing the band by this point, because we played some gigs.
Yeah, no, we were definitely doing the band at this point. I mean, God, it was. Then I have to say, thank God, it wasn't the original version of the band. This was the band as it became, which was me and you, really.
Band 2.0.
Well, later down the line, we had Wriggle, didn't we, on drums? Ian Wriggle, really cool guy. And then we had Harry the Bastard,
singing.
Harry the Bastard as the singer, didn't we? And such as he was. And he was another cool guy, whoever he was. To this day, I don't really know who he was.
He just came up to us and said, "Can I sing for you?" Like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, all right. Because you didn't like singing.
No, I didn't.
It wasn't a strength, but it wasn't a weakness. But it was something you preferred to play.
It's okay. I wasn't a singer.
No, but you got us by. I mean, you did plenty of gigs, and one of the best gigs we ever did. You sang for that. But Harry was he was a bit more of he was able to do the stage presence thing, which we couldn't do when you locked behind the instruments as such. So
no, and so there you go. That was it. Take no credit, and we took no notice of TV back then.
No,
we're going to go.
You.
No, we're going to go away, take a quick break. We've still got 3 more games this week. 3 more games to get through. So please do hang around. We're back for 3 more games. Let's waste no time. Graham, it's over to you to tell us all about the precious Moon Shadow.
The Moon Shadow. Carried away on a
by
moon
shadow.
Moon Shadow. Been a lot of Moon games, haven't there? So this is $10.99, 65%, published by Idea Software again.
Oh, they're back.
They're back. This time they've got a manager, Antonio Farina. I thought he was the guy that was in Dennis Farina's brother. Dennis Farina's brother, isn't it? Antonio Farina. Coded by Paolo Galimberti again.
Oh, yeah.
The guy that did Lupo Alberto. We've just spoke about him. He also did the graphics, and he also did the music here too. So there's a go. Surprise.
Talented guy.
So I've got a blurb, and I found an Italian version of the instructions. So I translated them with ChatGPT.
No.
This is what you get when you do that. Okay. It says, when you had first thought to be merely an omen sliced through your mind like the sharp, gleaming blade of your sword.
Why have you done this?
You awoke to a searing pain. With no time to react to this numbness, nor to defend yourself. You turned your gaze to the sky, immersing yourself in a palette of colours. The blue sky, just as you had seen it a few hours earlier, has now blended into pitch black darkness of the night. A dark light, so dark that its form eluded human eyes, has appeared in the heavens. The gentle Ceefax has been replaced by Septerios, the bringer of death and ruin. Ceefax had not been completely devoured, but soon its benevolent power would be swept away by an eclipse of catastrophic proportions. In the depths of the underworld, a sinister messenger of darkness awaits the perfect moment to emerge, ready to command its horde of demons to pillage and destroy. It took the form of a serpent, its proportions anything but reassuring.
Okay.
Never before had such a display of power and evil been seen. The serpent was already savouring the thought of feasting upon human flesh, strengthened by its dark magic, so powerful that no man could approach without being utterly destroyed. Its eyes gleamed with an infernal light, its movements swift and precise, lightning fast and lethal. A single gesture from it would unleash an onslaught of unimaginable atrocities. Yet there was still hope, however fragile. A hope hanging by a thread, for the fate of all rested upon an amulet. Once safeguarded by the priests of the past, the amulet was the only weapon they had against the encroaching evil. Time before the eclipse could be measured like sand slipping through an hourglass. Finding the amulet was of utmost importance, a matter of life and death, and every effort had to be made to recover it. Once retrieved, the final battle could begin. The destruction of the wicked Septerios and the banishment of its dark creatures into the eternal abyss of the underworld. 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 Ah, underworld. Ah. Okay, so this Moon Shadow business. All right, so start the game, and I think I loaded this. It was a disc, I think, or was it tape? I loaded it off a cartridge, I think. Weirdly, I don't know what it's all about. I think it's a multi-load. I don't know actually. I don't know what it is.
Do you know anything? What do you know?
I loaded it off the cartridge, but I didn't look to see if it was a disc-based game. I think it
There's
probably
both
was.
the tape and disc. It came on
Probably
tape and
was,
disc.
yeah,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Nice, a reasonable, I guess, loading screen.
It's a weird one, isn't it?
I think they've watched Conan the Barbarian, is what they've done for that.
Yeah.
So you've got a man fighting a very large snake.
Yes.
All euphemisms aside there. But actually, I'll say this. That is a nice Moonshadow logo. Very
Yes.
Psygnosis. Someone's been playing and doing a lot of Psygnosis type gaming here, because this has all of the pizzazz of a Psygnosis. It feels like a Psygnosis game, very close to, albeit not quite that polished, but it does have that vibe about it. So the idea of the game, this is essentially a good old-fashioned run and seek, I guess you'd call it, where you have to run around, lots of scrolling, flip screen levels on this, aren't they? Sorry, lots of flip screen levels, jumping around to find stuff, to pick stuff up, to get the key, to go through the thing. We've seen this game trope like a million times.
Mm-hmm.
So the question then is, what is there special about this that makes it quite interesting? Okay, well, you'll get past that humorous looking, if nice logoed a bit, although the logo is lost over the face of the snake. But you get past that. And there's actually some nice music in this. I'll give credit where credit's due. He's proven to be quite the musician on the C64 because the music is good.
Yeah, really good.
And remember, he did everything here. So once the credits come up, you get a whole bunch of different credits. But either way, you've got some good stuff going on here. So nice titles, a nice effect on the Moonshadow. It has a bit of slick to this, Adrian, I thought.
Yeah.
Had a little bit of polish to this, bit of pizzazz. When the game starts, you'll start off, and it actually felt a little bit like a miniaturized version of the Sacred Armor of Antiriad.
Do you know, I've written the very same thing.
It's got that vibe. I think what this guy's done, and this is no disrespect to him, he's just looked at games that have got a good vibe. Sacred Armor of Antiriad got a classically good vibe, so it's got a little bit of that in it. Some of those, Shadow of the Beast's got a little bit of the vibe, so it's got that in it. He's looked at the graphic styles of some of the Palace games, it's got a little bit of that in it.
Yep.
So it's very much, it looks a bit like a Palace game, but with the kind of logo and branding a little bit of a Psygnosis game. If this had been a Psygnosis, if that had been a Psygnosis game and cover instead of that Conan the Barbarian thing, you could have been forgiven for thinking this was along those lines of those games that it could have been a Shadow of the Beast variant easily. Anyway, or Baal, is it? There was another one like that. Anyway, so you'll start the game and you'll be presented with actually quite impressive visuals here for what you get. So you've got here a game, it's a flip screen game. You've got to run around the map, find the things, like I said. Now you control the main character of this, who is a shirtless warrior, I guess. But he looks pretty good. I think he's a good sprite, 2 sprites high, well animated, nice and easy to control. The control's fast, so you run and move it around. It pretty much runs and moves a bit like Lupo Alberto, actually. I'm not convinced that this isn't the Lupo Alberto engine with just some better graphics in it.
Could possibly be.
But you run, so because you can run around, jump and go up and down, left and right, and explore in this game. So it's a game where it's multi-scrolling, multi-directional. Multi-flick, yes. Multi-flicking, multi-directional. And so you'll start the game and you'll immediately be impressed with the visuals. The background graphics in here are quite impressive. They look very nice. They are very sacred armor. There's some nice shading and detail, good use of color here. The main game window is probably the top, I would say, 3/4. With the bottom is the UI. At the bottom, you've got your weapon, your life meter. You've only got a certain amount of time to achieve your aim, which is to get the amulet in this, because I think you've got a full lunar cycle or something, and once that fully goes across, that's it, you're done. You've only got that amount of time to do it. And then I think there's like they always seem to put a score on these things, don't they? But there's a score in there now. Additionally, this game uses the top and bottom border to good effect. So over the bottom, you'll get a scrolling message. It's in Italian, so no idea what it says, but it sounded good. So one of the things it said, Oranella Presenti. I don't know what that means. It might be a spell. I don't know. But when you pick up objects, it's probably explaining to you what they do.
Yeah, it does.
And so the idea then is you can go around. You've got a weapon as well. You can throw weapons, and there are creatures on this that you can either shoot at and avoid, move. They do respawn, though. So it's borrowed that from Cauldron 2, and that is an annoying thing that it does.
And Antiriad as well.
Antiriad, yeah.
Has it.
So I think this is like an Italian Antiriad, Antiriano, isn't it? The Sacred Armor of Antiriano. Antonio.
Yeah, that'll do.
But it does look pretty good. And that UI is quite a nice scrolly design. It's not bad looking, actually, all of that. It looks good. There's a nice in-keeping style to it. It was also reminiscent of a bit of Zamzara in there as well. There's that kind of game, that kind of walk and scroll and move around type thing, and I quite enjoyed it for that. The graphics are nice and varied. They're not very big levels, so I'm led to understand. I thought they were, but I read a few reviews that said they felt they weren't. Zapped certainly didn't think they were very big. They didn't seem to think there was much to go at with this, but I would disagree with that. I thought there was quite a lot to go at with this. So then you control him with your joystick, and like I said, directions, same as Lupo, really. The directions push up and he jumps. You can't float him in the air, but he jumps over things, fire to shoot, and then you're just running left and right. Well-animated sprites. The enemies are unusual, but there's a sort of array of enemies on the screen. They do respawn and get in your way, and they are annoying. and you've got to jump up on the various levels. The background levels of graphics on this are nicely coloured and varied. So you've got green grass areas with sort of ground detail. You have these nice kind of steps, but they're shaded in kind of a nice blue kind of colour, which gives it a really unusual tone. And the trees have got kind of the green, but they're kind of brown looking. It's an autumnal palette for this, really. And the purple, use of purple, and it gives it kind of a magic-y quality, which is actually a really nice choice of colour for a game of this type. Now, I don't really go for these kind of games because there's not a lot to do other than move around and find things and pick things up. So you'll run along. You can hold multiple objects, and to change the objects, you choose the cursor keys to go. So I think you can hold 6 objects, and when you run over them to pick them up, you can move your cursor to the left and right at the top of the screen. It moves you across the top border, remember? And then you can pick up other objects. And the idea is that you can utilize those objects for specific tasks in the game. So there's a giant monster thing made up of skulls. You've got to find the right thing to get past that. There's a locked door. You need to find the key. There's a potion that you need to mix with something else, I think, in a cauldron. And it's one of those games where you've got a few tasks to do. And I think there are also power-ups such as the health increase you can find and boosters and things like that. I didn't actually come across any because I was very much hit by the first kind of problem with the game is that you only get 1 life. Which is a bit of a shame. Now, you only got 1 life in Antiriad, if you think about it, because you could get, you only go, you had energy, and if it ran out, you were done. Yeah. Well, you surfaced, but because you went magicked himself, but you could get locked in the suit, couldn't you? Yeah. And of course, you're on a timeline in this game as well, so you can just keep running around, pick things up, but it does feel a little bit more sparse, and it is a little bit one note in the sense that there's not outside of those things to do. It's kind of the same sort of curse as Lupo Alberto. It's just lacking a bit more game design. It just needed a bit more game in it. So it's got a really nice look, really nice feel, really weird story, of course. It just, as parts of it, it just feels like it doesn't have enough game in it to really make it really compelling enough to want to get through it. But it does look quite nice, and it has that really nice music, and the tone of it's all quite good. Now, we've seen a lot of these games come and go, so I think this one is a little bit more special. And I say that because I think this is one of the nicer looking ones of these we've seen in quite a while. It is very Sacred Arm of Antiriad. It is very Palace. It inherits those problems. And that single life thing. So when you die in this, you do also go back to the beginning of the thing as well, which is really annoying. And those are a bit of the unforgivable game design choices that they've made. So in Lupo Alberto, they made classic design choice. They didn't scroll the screen till it was too late. In this one, they've made the mistake of not allowing you to have more lives or not respawning the enemies. Some of those classic game design mistakes that these games always make, they've made them. Yes. And because of that, it makes it sort of that restarting from the beginning makes it a chore. If there's not loads of screens, I thought there was quite a few screens to this, but maybe I just didn't. I wouldn't say there was exactly the same either. When you start, for example, you can go left and you can go right. And when you scroll left, you can then go up and down, and there's ways you can go into the caverns, and there's places to explore. Now, I thought there was quite a lot to that, and there's ways you can climb up, and there's other areas you can go, and there's things to pick up. I think because the instructions that I found were in Italian, I wasn't exactly sure what I was really meant to do, other than sort of try and piece together. When I found a key, I thought, I've seen a door, maybe I'll go and try that. And maybe that's the logic, but you are, like I said, on that timeline. But I didn't find anything in this game that made me go, it isn't very good. It looks really nice. It played okay. It's just that single life business. So if you die, you start from the beginning again. That restarting thing is a chore. And I think that the trouble is it leaves it with not enough to really get hold of. So it just feels like there's something of the game missing. I bet there's way more to this than I managed to get into, because it is quite hard as well, because you don't take many hits to get wiped out. And then you're back to the big square one again. You think, okay, I'll try going this way again. And you do go on, you could go for a bit of an explore. Now, I didn't see if there's any long plays of it either. There might be. And that would have given me a kind of sense of whether it really is a long game, or whether it's actually a game that's quite short, and they've wrapped the difficulty spike up to make it so it feels like it's a bit longer. That was what Zap accused it of in their review. Now, I can't verify that. But what I played was a good game with a nice feel, great music, a good look and feel, good graphics, nicely presented, easy to control, fairly simple gameplay, actually, at its core, with just those fundamental game design choices that we should have eradicated long ago. But these are obviously new to the game, as it were. So they're making those mistakes, which we'd hoped we'd seen off. Add to that a load of gibberish instructions that made no sense anyway, and periodic instructions in Italian, and I was a little bit lost in amongst what I was trying to do. Top of the thing here, of course, there's that $10.99 price tag again. Had this been $3.99, I think you might have had a much better outing. I think this would have fared a lot better. As a $10.99 game, it feels like it's just a little bit too simple and a little bit not quite full enough to be $10.99. But I like what I played, and it was one of the times when I played a game when I really wanted there to be more to it. where I wanted big enemies to come on the screen and to have a big battle with something and to be compelled to move on. A little bit of story. I picked something up and a text box appeared and you found this, you need to take this to the so-and-so and go and do these things. Just a bit more direction, because I know Antiria had the comic book, so you kind of knew what the whole point was, and the name of the thing was in the title, wasn't it? So I think it needed that narrative direction, and I think maybe that was literally lost in the translation. But I thought this was a really promising game, albeit that it just was too expensive and probably a bit late to the party, actually. But what did you think?
Yeah, there's a lot to like here. There's another game that I'd say that what this reminded me of a bit was Storm Warrior. It's a little bit
very
of that
much so. Yeah, we haven't played that for the podcast, have we? But it is very like that.
Yeah, it's got that kind of look. But one thing I will say about this is, I think a good thing you picked out is the color details. You would think that blue bricks with a pink highlight wouldn't work, but what it gives it almost like a dusk or early morning, because obviously this is happening overnight, isn't it? So it's got that kind of like sunset light feel to it when there's the red, and that's quite an unusual color scheme for this. Red bricks and things like that, pink bricks, and you think it would work, but it kind of does. There's kind of a nice shade to this, but it's an interesting flick screen adventure. As you rightly said, reminded me quite heavily of Sacred Armor of Antiriad in the way it looked and played. You're not quite as big as the guy in Antiriad.
No.
But it's got some great music in this. Great music.
Yeah.
And considering this is all done by one guy, it's Paolo Giallimberto. All of it. That's really impressive. Yeah. But what it has to me is he's the only person that's played it, and then it's been released.
Yeah.
But his playtesting on this would have ironed out some of those kinks that you've sort of give the players a life, give more life, give this sort of thing. But because he's probably played it and probably knows exactly where to run and how to do it and everything like that, it's one of them things, isn't it? So I think this is a lack a bit of playtesting on this, because it is quite tricky in places. It doesn't control quite as smooth as you want it to. Jumping up some of the steps is a bit odious time, and falling down. Sometimes you can run past them, sometimes you can't. There's some weird bits every now and again. The visuals are great, though. Nice animation and enemies. Some great shading on the various background elements, as I said. It feels a bit fiddly. Trying to line up some of the shots with the enemies is tricky at times, because they move quite a lot, in sort of random patterns, and you're trying to sort of jump and trying to get at them. So it can lead to some quick deaths with only one life. Maybe the challenge level's a bit too high. And I think that it's just a case of if this had been put in other people's hands before this came out, then you could have sort of tuned it a little bit better. It's a very impressive solo effort, though. Great music, great presentation, great looks, nicely designed in and of itself. The levels, the rooms all look good. It wasn't, I don't know what I was expecting. The disc version, by the way, that I put in the folder is English. So it's got the English scrolling things at the bottom. So just to say, it is descriptions of the things that you pick up, that scrolling text at the bottom. The cartridge version we had was Italian, which is obviously I didn't understand, so I checked that one out. But it's just a bit tricky for its own good. Maybe that's my advancing years. I don't know. I think, but I think if your bag is flick screen and Tyriad style adventures, and you are looking for something a bit more almost Metroidvania-ish, because you kind of got to go back and forth and backtrack and find stuff to get stuff and get on and that kind of thing, this might be worth a look. You might want to go look at this if you haven't before. At the time, you're right, 11 quid, maybe a bit too high, when you could probably pick up the Cauldron 2 and Antiriad probably at budget range at this point, and games like Zamzara and stuff like that, which are not the same, but you'd look at them and go, this looks quite similar. And like I said, Storm Warrior was the other one. But this is pretty good, and I'm really impressed with these games. The cover is something we'll look at next week, by the way. But yeah, good game. Decent. 65% it got. Probably about right, because I think for that price.
Same as Lupo. That should have been what Lupo got score-wise. It's about right.
I think so, yeah. I think the guy who's made these is pretty talented. Like I said, that music was really good.
Really good at that. Really good.
There we go. That's Precious Moon Shadow. Let's move on.
Carried away.
To our precious next one. Oh God. This is Cricket Captain. Okay. This is full price. This is £9.99, and he got 70%. Utterly
stupid.
What the hell is going on? This is Cricket Captain from D&H Games. So all the credits you get with this, always a sign of a winner. Other sign of a winner is that D&H Games are also the home of Cult Games. You remember
of course
them,
it
don't
is.
you, Graham? It's
Unfortunately.
those geniuses that brought us the striker, rugby coach, and a host of others that are crap. But they were budget games. They were crap, but at least they were budget. This is 10 quid. £10.
Unbelievable.
Okay, right. This is probably going to be a short review. I'm just going to, So cast your minds back to episodes like 15 when our reviews were like 2 minutes long for some of the crap shit. It might be a bit longer, but who knows? So anyways, when this loads, it'll ask you whether you want to load a save game or not. Obviously, you'll not want to because you won't want to play another one.
You won't have one.
No. So then it asks you to wait for quite some time. It just sits there. Just wait. And so then it asks you which counter you wish to play as. This is all black text on a full green screen.
Ooh.
Really interesting. You've got a choice of 16 counties, but who cares? I chose Kent. You can choose who you want. I chose Kent. At that point, you need to wait again. It says, please wait. Before you get a screen that's remarkably similar to Rugby Coach.
Yes, isn't it?
So it's got a series of text options, all chosen by the appropriate key. So you can press P to play a match, G for game, T for team, F for fixtures, J for JP League, S for a scout, I for injuries, C for CA League, N for net training, and 1 to save the game. Okay, so let's do these in reverse pretty much. Net training. Pressing N for net training, this brings up a blue screen that's 3 options, bowling, batting, or overall. You can train at one of these once. So only between each game, you can train at one of these. So selecting one of these makes, you basically got a list of numbers on the right-hand side. I think it's 1 to 15 or 1 to 16. That's your, that's your squad of cricketers. So you pick bowling or batting. And essentially what happens is a bar or there's sort of an icon goes against each one of the 16 numbers. And it'll either show a blank, so nothing, a minus, or a plus. Now, I'm guessing that training at something either had no effect, made the player worse, or better. Since when does training at something make you worse?
Cricket, who knows?
I was really shit at bowling. Now I'm shitter.
All that training I've done made me worse, sir.
Most of my players, they were made worse by training. What's the point? C shows C. Press C. This shows the standing for the CA League. I don't know what. A J, that shows the standing for the JP League. I imagine these are cricket leagues. I don't know. It doesn't explain anything, so who knows? If you press I, this shows you what injuries you have, if you've got any injuries. F shows your upcoming fixtures for each league. Scouting lets you send a scout for a cost of £500 to scout out another team. T shows you your team, and here you can swap, change, transfer, or edit your team if you want. Game shows you the upcoming opponent. And finally, P brings the excitement to a head and allows you to play the next match, which it starts straight away. As soon as you press, if you want, don't press P by accident because the next game just starts. No, you're in. And what you get here is cricket in text format. So you get a text display with some coloured lines, and you've got the option to press D to declare or C to change order. It's text-based cricket. The pinnacle of excitement has been reached. That's all I could think of at this point. There's no reason to make any more games. It should have stopped at this point. Why? We talked about The Last of Us 2 earlier on. I can play text-based cricket.
Text-based cricket.
It's just what? It doesn't get better than this. The display updates for the batsman racking up runs. At the bottom, it shows the bowler in text, obviously, and it shows the number of extras, wickets, and overs that have passed. It just goes on. You can declare or change order, whatever. Once you've had all your overs, then the other team come into bat, and you get to watch it all again. People get out and whatever, and that's it. I know people who like games. Like watching numbers go up. We like numbers that go up. Not like this. Not, it's quote the Matrix, not like this. Not like this. Once the game is done, you get the results from all the other games. You get your bank balance, and anyone injured tells you before it's back to the green screen and do it all again. This is dreadful on every level. It's fucking crap. Boring, mind-numbing, soul-destroying crappery on a scale I've not seen for some time. And it's 10 quid, and it's really basic.
It is. It really is.
Which I guess is impressive, but press run stop and it breaks. And then you can press list and you can see the entire game. There it is. And it's like, I'm not saying anything more about this. There was a budget game the previous year, right? There's a budget game also called Cricket Captain from High Tech, came out in 1990. Way more impressive than this. Because if you really like cricket, you want to play that kind of game, go and seek the one from High Tech Software. It's all icon driven and it's got graphics and everything, and it looks like a version of Footballer of the Year. You know, it actually looks all okay. It's Cricket Captain, but there's excitement. There's something to do. This is a full price travesty. I can't be bothered to say anything more about this. 70%.
No.
Better than Moonshadow. Better than Lupo Alberto.
No.
Nearly as good as Swiv.
Ridiculous.
Just to put this into context, I don't know what they were smoking. I mean, Cricket Crapton.
Yes.
And that's it. There, I said it. I can't believe they charged a tenner for a basic game. This is a listing. I was genuinely shocked, genuinely appalled at this. This was so rubbish. Just avoid this. Don't play it. Don't give it the time. No. Awful. What did you think?
Cricket crapped on, I thought.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't even like cricket. I felt sorry for people who do. After watching this, I'm thinking, goodness me, I don't really feel sympathy for people who are into cricket. It's not my thing. But after looking at this, I was like, goodness me, this is the best they could serve them with. Wow.
Yeah.
So when the first thing I did, this has got a redo from start error. I was like, oh, okay.
You shouldn't have done.
I went to choose Lancashire, which has annoyed me because they've obviously not got enough letters to put the full names in. So I chose Lancashire and it just said redo from start, choose your country. I was like, oh, okay. So you are in basic then. And then it just said it was loads of like waiting around, I'm guessing, for basic to calculate whatever the hell it was doing. Just this game would be a test of the patience of anyone, especially cricket fans. I mean, I know that they're used to things that take a bit of pace and it's just slow. No, and it's not famous for its invigorating excitement. I'm assured that it is very exciting, actually, when it's test cricket, but I don't know enough about it.
Well, it's not test cricket. It's the 20 overs stuff, isn't it, where the 2020...
Yeah, but I know, but it's... Yeah, I don't know anything about
cricket. But this
cricket.
isn't that.
No. This is match fishing, and this is worse than that. Yeah. And that takes them. I mean, at least there was graphics involved at a certain point in that,
and you had the excitement of keeping your hands under the table.
It's this Ceefax cricket, isn't it? I mean, this is what people did. Maybe now the only thing I would say about this is a really slow, basic rendition of anything, and clearly a listing that someone's typed in and made out that was their own from some God knows where over God knows what. And if it isn't, and they've done it themselves, bravo. You're an accomplished basic programmer. Now get back in your DeLorean and go back to 1983 when it would have been useful. We're in the machine code world now. We've got graphics and we've got a machine that's way more capable of delivering text-based table information about cricket. This is a cricket stat delivery system, and not a good one. Not a good one at all. Even if it was very good at doing that, which it isn't, it's just uninteresting at every level. It means nothing, but maybe it means something to somebody. Maybe there's an audience for it. I don't know who they would be or whether they would find it or whatever, but the depths that some people have gone to get an experience of whatever. Maybe someone walked into the shop. I mean, £10 for this. Go and buy a cricket ball set from the local corner shop and go to the field and bat it around for a bit with your mates.
You'll get
way
enjoyment.
more fun than you will.
Yeah.
You will. And if you think that £10 is a good value for this, take that cricket bat and smack yourself over the head with it really hard and then see how you feel about it, because I think you'll change your mind pretty pronto. This was just rubbish. Utter rubbish. I don't know if it's a good cricket game. I don't think it is, because cricket is better than looking at text about cricket. So rubbish. I mean, I was never going to like it anyway, but I double hated it. And the black text on green, that's an accessibility nightmare even now. Get lost, you piece of crappy rubbish. Rubbish. Ugh, £10, 70%. Zap. What? Come on.
No.
What? Are you mental? No way. I don't care what they say. There's no way they could say anything about this that would make it good. Rubbish. No. No, I don't like cricket and I don't love it. And I certainly wouldn't if this is how it's represented on the C64. We've seen better games years ago and we didn't like them. Remember that cricket game that was played from 9 million miles above the pitch? That was way better than this.
There was Tim Loves Cricket. There was Ian.
Yeah, go and play that.
Ian Botham one. That was dreadful.
But still better than
cricket.
this.
Yeah, there was. Yeah. All of those are better
Unbelievable.
than this.
Unbelievable that they can think that they could get away with this. But like I said last time, remember, the one thing you can say if you've bought this game is that you at least have saved somebody else from buying it and you've done them a service.
Yeah.
So at least you've done a good deed. You've prevented someone else from suffering the same gobsmacked horror that you would have done when it took the 10 minutes to load, which it would have done in BASIC.
Yeah, absolutely. 70%. How's that? This is out for a duck.
It says the umpire is literally struck back here.
Absolutely. This is crap before wicket.
It is.
And every other cricket pun you can think of. Dreadful. Yeah. Dreadful thing. Dreadful. Yeah. Let's move on. We've still got one game left for this episode. And Graham, it's time for you to take us to the good old US of A, back in time, and tell us all about North and South.
So this was an 11.99 monster from Infogrames. 91% it got in, Zap. Yeah, Sizzler.
Ooh.
This was produced by the humorously named Joe Boner. You're not allowed to laugh at that.
You just said it was humorous.
Yeah, but you're not allowed
You
to
set
laugh.
me up to laugh. If you'd have just said it was made by Joe Boner, I would have gone.
Yeah, exactly. You'd have tittered quietly. Anyway, he probably prefers the name Bonner. But anyway, it's Joe Boner to you and me. He did BMX Kids. He produced it. Anyway, conversion for this. I think it's an Amiga game first, one of this. But its conversion was Probe Software. The code of this version is Daryl Bowers. Now, he coded Baal. Do you remember Baal? We reviewed that in episode 129. We called that a dull clump and plink around the brown caves of Brownsville. So it doesn't sound like we were that impressed with that.
I don't think we were.
He also did something called Cheapskate and A View to a Kill. Remember those?
I do remember those.
The
View to a
graphics
Kill?
Yeah, exactly. I was waiting for that.
For a moment, I was like, and I thought of the Living Daylights, so that a good one we played the other week, not so long back. And then I realised it wasn't that one at all.
So at this point, you can't really shout the producer's name in anger, can you? Boner! It's like you're trying to summon something. And the graphics are by Lee Ames. He did Smash TV. We haven't seen that yet, but he also did Viz the Game. I don't think we've seen that either. Maybe we have.
No, I think that's next week.
But the musician is Jerome Haroon, Mr. Haroni Tell. Mr. Tell, he did it. And the music's pretty good as well. So it's got, and it's a version of the Amiga music and all of it. And it's actually pretty good. So North and South then, what are you on about? Well, it's a strategy action video game released in 1989, originally on other formats. It's made its way to the C64, but it's Amiga, Atari ST, and MS-DOS. So it's a 16-bit D-port, or a D whatever we call them now. It's based on a popular Belgian comic series, which is titled Le Tunique Bleu, the Blue Coats. Created by Raoul Calvin, the writer, and Willie we got Boner and Willie in this. We have. And Willie Lambill is the artist. Goodness me. And published by Editions Dupois. So the Blue Coats is the Le Tunique Bleu is a long-running Belgian comic series that first appeared in Spyro magazine in 1968, created by, like I said, Raoul Calvin and Willie Lambill. Set during the American Civil War, the series follows the adventures of Sergeant Cornelius Chesterfield, a disciplined and loyal Union soldier, and Corporal Blutch, a cynical and reluctant fighter who constantly tries to avoid battle. Despite their contrasting personalities, the duo find themselves in various humorous and action-packed situations, often highlighting the absurdity of war. While the series is known for its light-hearted tone and comedic elements, it also includes moments of historical accuracy and sharp satire, addressing the harsh realities of war with a mix of humour, adventure, and social commentary. The comic remains a beloved classic in the Franco-Belgian bande dessinée, with over 60 albums published and a lasting influence on European comics. This is as far as the Franco-Belgians are concerned, is in the same league as Asterix.
Oof.
So, yeah, heavy going.
Wow.
Don't think it's quite in the Tintin area, but it's not far off, is it?
What
With
is?
60 albums.
What is apart from Rupert?
Exactly. Anyway, so what is all of this then? Well, like I said, this is a strategy action hybrid game set during that American Civil War period with a light-hearted yet engaging mix of turn-based strategy. That's what the official blurb is. You can choose to either command the Union or Confederate forces vying for control of the United States. The game takes place on a simplified map where players move armies, capture forts, and manage reinforcements. Battles are resolved through real-time skirmishes, but infantry, cavalry, and artillery units are controlled in fast-paced, side-scrolling combat. Okay, what you want to call it that. But certainly in places, I suppose it is. There are also action sequences such as storming enemy forts or defending trains from attacks. Despite its historical setting, North and South leans into the comedic, almost cartoonish style, making it more accessible than serious war simulations. It features weather effects, random events like Native American or Mexican bandit raids, and even humorous animations. The game was well received for its blend of strategy and action, easy to learn mechanics, and multiplayer mode, making it standout title on the Commodore 64, so say they. It remains a nostalgic classic for retro gaming enthusiasts too, apparently. I don't know about that so much. Okay. So it is a weird combination, not a weird combination. It's an obvious combination of turn-based strategy and real-time action sequences. We've seen this before. We've seen it. It was called Defender of the Crown by definition.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying this game is Defender of the Crown. What I'm saying is we've seen the exact same game play out, and that was Defender of the Crown.
Yeah.
So you can play as either the Union, which are the blue ones, or the Confederacy, which is the greys. And before starting, you can adjust those settings on a very confusing and difficult to understand UI screen.
Yeah,
Now,
I don't know
you
what
get
any of it meant.
You get kind of a nice intro sequence to this. So, and it is basically this is straight from the Amiga, but they are conversions of the graphics. So you get some nice credits. It's a nice animated sort of sequence at the beginning. It's pretty nice. And you get to the sort of north and south, choose your way you want to play it. There's a lot you can change in that screen because you can change the type of game it is from a strategy to arcade or, one or the other. And I think one of them just takes away the arcade sequences, which means it's probably just looking at a map a lot, I think.
Yeah, it is.
You can change the difficulty. You start off on a higher difficulty than easy, which is a bit odd as well. And then you can also choose whether it's a 2-player game, 1 player, who's controlling with joystick and keys, that kind of thing. And you can also change the start date of the day you start the campaign, the war. So you can start into the war as it goes. And I'm not really sure what that really does. There is extensive instructions that probably do explain a little bit more about that. But for my money, the easiest way to get into this game is just to go to the little go button and click it, because it says that's, if you do that, you get straight to the game and you can go with it. Now, you can also, as I've said, on this weird layout. So on the left-hand side, you can press the map and it plays a little tune and it changes the image from the corporal to the sort of the other ranks. So that's how easy the game is. And then on the right-hand side, there's what looks like a guy next to a tape recorder. And that's where you can choose to play 1 or 2 player and you can change some of those options there. There's also a joystick. And like I said, it's quite confusing, isn't it? Then there's 3 tiles at the top, which is where you can add whether you have attacks from the native and the Mexicans and the Indians and the native Indians and things like that. Then you can tickle the photographer that's at the bottom of this. You can tickle his ass and he goes, oh, which is weird. But I guess there's the humor part, right? And you can click go and then the game will effectively sort of begin. Now, so once you've done all of that and you've gone and chosen whether you are playing 1 or 2 player. Now, I only played this 1 player. And I have to say that it sounds to me like the 2-player option is actually pretty clever because you can actually choose to be 2 different levels. So you could choose to be a corporal versus one of the lower ranks, and it actually changes the nature of the way the game plays according to the various ranks that you are. So it's reminding me, we played, I think it was one of the leaderboard games when you could have a person playing as a novice playing against somebody who was a more advanced player in the same sort of realm. And you can do that here as well, and which is quite nice. So you've got an in. You don't have to both play as a extreme difficulty. Okay, you can, which is quite interesting. The mainstay of the game, you'll be on what is the strategy map. After you add a little text intro, you'll go to the strategy map, which is essentially a map of the United States divided into territories. You can move your armies turn by turn. This is the turn-based phase, if you like. You can move your armies turn by turn to take control of states, very similar to the way you took over the counties in Defender of the Crown. The idea here is to capture forts and towns, increase your wealth, which lets you recruit reinforcements, exactly like you did in Defender of the Crown. And there's also railroads which transport gold to you. Now, they have to be a direct connection to your territories for that to happen. If there's disruption in the territories, you don't get that income. And you need the income to buy extra soldiers and reinforcements. There's also, like I said, random events like Mexican bandits, Native Americans, or storms. You'll see the storm cloud floating around, and that can cause trouble and affect your army movements and your army strength on any given basis.
Yeah.
So you control, on this stage, and this is a nice touch, I have to say, you control the arrow. Now, in the Amiga version, you move it around with a mouse. But on the C64, instead of having a joystick waving a mouse around, you actually just hop between the territories. Now, it can get a little bit annoying because you can sort of hop too far and you have to hop around a bit. But once you get used to it, it's actually pretty quick to just scoot around the different territories and just press fire and then scoot back. Yeah, it works. It's a perfect way of doing that on a C64. Works perfectly fine. So... So the idea then, so you'll choose the territories are mapped with this. You'll start the game. You'll have 2 soldier icons on 2 certain territories, and you'll also have some flags which indicate that those territories belong to you. Your opponents will have 2 soldiers marking, and the soldiers are an indication of the number of soldiers, number of artillery, number of cavalry you have, so an army. And then they also have flags in the certain territories, which is, again, very similar to Defender of the Crown in that respect.
Yeah.
And also at the bottom, you'll have a map. At the bottom, you have a date indication and also an indication of whose turn it is. And then there's the sort of edge background. The graphics are pretty good at this, actually. The good rendition of the Amiga one all looks pretty good. Nice map, good sound going on as well at this point. It all feels pretty active, and it's reasonably easy to get a read on what's going on. I mean, the more flags you've got for you, the better you're doing, right? Yep. So you'll then, obviously, you click on one of your soldiers, and you can then move your army, and you can go move that to an unoccupied space if you want to do that. And that will then, obviously, you can take over spaces, a bit like you did in Defender of the Crown. And or you can move to a territory that has another flag, and you can then, sometimes you'll get it might just walk in and nothing happens, but you might get an action sequence. And that can be one of the action sequences where you might encounter a fort and you've got to then attack that. And I'll talk about the action sequences separately in a minute. And then also you might get another action sequences where you get the battle, the real sort of real-time battles. And again, I'll look at the real-time parts of it. But on this map sequence, that's principally what you're aiming to do. Now, periodically, you will get a delivery of gold, and then enables you to fortify some of your soldiers and get more soldiers. And you can even combine armies as well. So if you have two separate armies and you need to fight a big battle, you can actually move them onto the same space. That doubles the size of your army for when you do go into the more of the battle. So once your turn is over and you've done all that, then obviously the opponent, whoever that may be, will then get the same, and they do the same thing, and the same thing happens for them. Remember, so that's the turn-based part. If you do go into any of the real-time combat battles, so when two opposing armies meet, you'll start a real-time battle. You get a nice little animation on the screen where the kind of cannonball goes whistling past. Again, leaning into that comic book. And then each player controls, you'll see a display screen. Now, I have always found these a little bit annoying, but you'll be on the left-hand side. In the middle, there'll be a cavern or a river or something with an inevitable bridge. And on the right-hand side is the opposing enemies. They're very tiny, single-color, silhouette-type sprite details. They're not very detailed in this. It's a bit of a letdown because I think Defender of the Crown did this much better. But so you end up on this kind of battlefield, and you can control the elements of the battlefield with the joystick. So you can control the infantry and run around, and you press fire to shoot. The enemy will be advancing towards you from the opposing side, and they'll periodically send horses across. You can then do yours. I forget what the key command is to change between the different types, but you can do that. But the idea is that you're meant to then go into a battle with them. So the infantry, you can shoot in volleys, but they're a bit slower. The cavalry do move a bit faster, but they're fragile, so they're good for hit and run. Artillery, long-range attacks, but it's very slow to reload, and I mean slow. And they, like I said, the battles take place on this battlefield where you can control manually the units. So it felt a little bit like, it felt a bit cheap when I got to that part. The graphics aren't as good. The graphics in the background were okay, but the graphics for the details of the battle just felt a little bit perfunctory, and it felt a bit samey. Every time I went into a battle, it was very, very similar. There was sort of 6 soldiers, maybe 3 horses and a cannon, and then it was like, they'd come charging, you'd shoot a few of them. You have to try and line up your men to get across the bridge, and they always ended up walking some of my men across into the chasm or into the river. So I was always losing men trying to get across the bridge because it seems stupid to even have the bridge there. It provided it just provided a pinch point for every battle, which was a bit disappointing. And that's not really. And then but meanwhile, the enemy will be lobbing cannonballs at you, and they're alarmingly accurate with theirs. So you can very quickly have your army decimated, and before you realise it, you've lost. Now, if you happen to do it the other way around, if you get across and you defeat their army, you'll win. You defeat their army, and then obviously you've reduced their effectivity on the battle. And when you go back to the turn-based, you've won that territory, and that's exactly how it worked for Defender of the Crown as well. So your flag goes in that territory, you've gained more, you'll get more money, you can build a bigger army, and so on it goes, and so on it goes. Now, if you do go into any of those territories and you end up with a fort siege, they're slightly different. They play very differently to the other areas. So if you go into a fort siege, it turns into a sideways scrolling run and avoid, I guess, run and gun, for want of a description.
Yeah.
So you've got a whole bunch of soldier lives, and the idea is you just run from left to right over a scrolling background, avoiding soldiers that run at you. It felt like a really weird North and South version of Green Beret, but without the finesse. It's just like run as fast as you can, get over everything as quick as possible, and that's it. It didn't feel, the graphics were okay on that part, but it did feel like a bit cheap. Again, the mini game parts seemed to let down all of the setup for the strategy part. So it just felt like to get through all of that, because I would have expected a bit like in Defender of the Crown. So a siege
with the sword
cannons.
fencing.
Yeah,
or maybe
exactly,
the sword fencing bit where you're going in.
Yeah, exactly that. You're going in, there's a bit of hand-to-hand combat. Then, maybe you barged your way in with, cannons or something. You shot at the fort, or the Alamo type. I don't know what I was quite expecting. A bit like a shootout.
So it would have been like the catapult section, but with cannons and...
Yeah. I think I was expecting a bit more siege and a bit more attacking of a fort than running left to right across a fort background, a bit like a Mad Green Beret type deal. It didn't seem right. It didn't fit in with the rest of the game, but that's how those work. And the idea is you've got to get to the end in order to win the fort, which seemed odd because it just felt like a race. It was like a running race. And I was like, that seems a bit weird. So that to me felt like a bit of a letdown. Like I said, you're side-scrolling. I guess I won't say it was platform, but it is just a side-scrolling bit where you've got to navigate through the guards to kind of get control of it. All right. Mm-hmm. If you also get the train raids, are basically the same thing, but with a train scrolling in the background. And this time you either have Mexicans or you have the Native Americans. So they've either got arrows or daggers, and they'll run and throw things at you. And again, you've got to run and jump onto and it's a bit more platforming, but it's basically the same as the previous thing, only with a slight background variation. Even the clouds are a different color, but it's principally the same thing. Mm-hmm. Again, it felt like it let the rest of the game down a bit. So gone are the ideas of all of the interactive elements that a game like this really needed to lean in on, which is what it would have given it the real, if you're going for Defender of the Crown and you're aiming for that, you need to put those in. You need to have your events. You need to have the random occurrences. If you're going to do it, you've got to do it like that. So it's missing those things. Now, those are the only battle real-time combat sequences you've got. The fort sieges, train raids, or the battles, the real-time combat battles, the sort of over the bridges. That's it. Other than that, you're back to the map and you're just fighting for territory, periodically getting trains, maybe getting, holed up in a storm or something like that. Uh-huh. Other than that, to win the game, you simply got to defeat the other side or hold more territory than the other one. And then you've won. So you've won the idea of North and South. So the idea of this was that it blends strategy, action, and humor. But I think it's missing some of those key things, isn't it? There is an end to this as well. So when you get to the end, you do get like an end sequence of sorts. But I don't know. It just all felt like it was missing the really important bits. So around the edges, the music was great for this. Let's say that for starters. The tone was fun. Graphics are very nicely drawn where they are drawn nicely and are very well realized. More or less throughout the game, the graphics aren't terrible. They're a bit over brown in places, but where it's set and kind of in that kind of westerny north and southy vibes, you kind of get the idea of it. And there is an adherence to the kind of color schemes of the north and south going on. Okay. I said about the menu selection at the start, it's really weirdly unintuitive because it's not clear what everything is and it's not very well explained in the instructions either. So I found it just easier to hit go and just sort of to get into it. The idea of the game feels, like I said, a simplified version of Defender of the Crown. And this is clearly leaning into that so much. Selecting territories, encountering forts as opposed to castles, getting resources as opposed, like you did in Defender of the Crown, which is exactly what it did. You got treasure for the more territories you held, which means you could build bigger armies and take over more territories. That's Defender of the Crown right there, that. So it's odd that the other arcade sections are sort of a bit funless, a run and gun, which is weird. And the fort and all those sections seem at odds with the strategic battle idea of this. They're not in keeping with the game in the way that Defender of the Crown kept their things within the game. The turn-based notion's okay, and I imagine two players working, at different opposing levels of experience. That's quite a nice touch for this. So you could probably have a good two-player game of this somewhere along the line if you didn't get fed up with the way that these sort of action sequences were. I like the way you select the map territories, that hopping from state to state. That was nice. Good for the C64 that they chose to make it different. Key stats for the territories seem really understated, though, and a bit confusing because they're on these tiny little block windows. You don't get a lot of view into them, which means you can get the basics of what's going on quickly, but you fail to get the detail. So you never really know where you are in this, which is a little bit annoying. Apart from the flags, you never know really how many men you've got and how much resource you have. And the train comes along and it's always got 6 gold and it adds to your gold and you can get more stuff, but it just feels like it's all a little bit hidden away in tiny boxes. The battles all feel like they're playing exactly the same. They're very frustrating, actually, at times, given that there's always that ravine or a river to cross. So every battle feels exactly the same with the same pinch points. And just shooting across and sort of charging periodically the cavalry while they blast you with cannons, it soon wears out the novelty of that. It needed what a great service we give. We don't have that in this one. The enemies, like I said, always a great shot with the cannons. So you can have some fun with this, I think, if you sort of went with it a bit. It doesn't feel very strategic on the whole, though. And even if you choose the strategy over the arcade, I'm not really sure what difference it would make other than you're going to have even less fun with it. The humor, which I guess is kind of the important thing here, is lost a little bit. So none of those cartoonish elements of satire or anything else have translated into this game whatsoever. The strategy parts on the map feel oddly arbitrary because the game doesn't give you a lot of update logic, unlike Defender of the Crown, which gives you constant information about where you're at, what's going on, and other things happening and around. And you know how Richard or Lionheart, whatever the other players are all doing. You know where everybody's at in that game. You know where you're pitched. You don't have that here. So you kind of bump and stumble your way into action sequences for forts and trains with no real idea of where they've come into the game, at what purpose it serves. And they're completely at odds then with the rest of the game and really over difficult at times too. They look nice, with some good sprites and backgrounds, but ultimately those mini games don't work in the way they should. And it all ties into the wider issue of the game not really giving you much progress information overall. You never really know how you're doing. Yes, you can see your flags in the States and you see soldier icons on the map, but how you are progressing through the time of the game, which is important enough to be a component that's selectable seems massively understated and horribly underrepresented in this. So while the game is fun in places, looks nice in places, has what is probably a bunch of hilarious characters, none of the point of the game and direction is carried into how it runs. And so you just kind of bump and stumble around the map until something more interesting happens. I liked the core notion of the action strategy. I like the idea. The king of the hill is defender of the crown, isn't it? And this proved that there's legs to those games if you do it right. But they have to be, they have to have those in-between parts. You need more than this. You need a periodic animation of something happening to keep you into the space. You need to know what's going on in the other side, a little bit of intrigue, a little bit of this. Maybe spies would have been a good thing to add to the logic here, or a little bit of Rocket Ranger mentality, and maybe some of that. That Rocket Ranger's a similar notion of sort of going into territories and things, but they had spies and they had things happening and they kept you informed. Just text updates, even a screen with text on it. Meanwhile, over in North and South, and a little bit of the comic maybe could have played out there. Without those elements, I found myself liking parts of the game, but not all of the game. I enjoyed the music. It's very good. And like I said, the graphics do look nice here and there. But this game gets so frequently pointless and dull at times and sometimes difficult and never really funny, never interesting enough. And you never really know how you're doing or how the enemy's doing. And because it lacks that drive, you don't feel compelled to really go anywhere with it. You'll go along with it for a while. You'll maybe take over a few territories and you'll be thinking, what is the point of this game actually? Where am I at? And then at that point, you'd be thinking, where's the off switch? I'm going to go and play Cricket Captain. No, you'd never think that. But that was my take from this game, is that I had high hopes going in and I kind of just felt them drain away slowly because I thought it was missing all the bits that really these games really need. If you're going to do them and you're going to emulate Defender of the Crown, then that's the benchmark. It needs those things. You need to be, this could have been a Confederate and Union version of Defender of the Crown and should have been. And it's missing all the elements that really made it drive along. And without them, you've just got a map that you can periodically click on things and sometimes stuff happens. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a well-produced and visually nice port of the 16-bit original, isn't it? It's a good port, but it carries all the problems of the original, which is a lack of depth, maybe. The design's nice, but all that is because it's a port from the 16-bit original, and that design in that was good. So, but they've done a good job in transferring that to the C64. So the title screen, the various options, the little animated changes, they're all really nice, and it's good to see that they've actually done them on the C64 rather than just do a stripped down version of it, which they could have easily done. Continues into the game, it's easy to control, the arrow flicking between points, there's an easy to read screen, you move your little arms around, blah blah blah. But yeah, the interstitial stages, the battles and things like that are not particularly much fun, or enjoyable. And I think what it lacks for me is if you, like you said, I think all your points are valid, and I think if you're going to come at Defender of the Crown, this 5-6 years after, when was Defender of the Crown? 86.
Yeah,
so you're 5 years later. If you're going to come at it, then you need to be as good as it. And the thing what Defender of the Crown did was it had characters.
Yeah,
and so it's easy to lock on as a player, as a human, as a person. When in any kind of story, you want characters, and so you had all those different characters. You had Robin Hood popping up. You had a story. You had this story, story of this. This is a story of a war, but there's no characters here. And all you do is you just move little people around a map, and you have these little sort of battles that happen, which, the background's quite nice, but yeah, the little silhouette figures are a bit cheap. And then the taking of the fort and the trains don't really feel like very much at all, and it just doesn't feel like it all hangs together properly. So, it felt like all the issues that were probably in the 16-bit version were probably here as well. It's not for me, this kind of thing. If I'm going to play something like this, I'll play Defender of the Crown, as you rightly so, because it does it right, and nothing else has really come along and actually knocked it off its perch in the 5 years since it came out. So whilst there's some things to like here, like the presentation and everything, and as you write, the arrow moving around, but beyond that, it just, for all its fact that it's based on a comic and should have characters and everything, it lacks character. So it lacks a real hook to proceedings, and that's what it just. And I think that's kind of why that's characteristic of those. The battles are all silhouettes. Who are these things? They're just characterless. They're just black silhouettes. If you think about, like I said, the combat sequence where you're taking over you're doing the nighttime raid on the castles in Defender of the Crown. There's great shadows moving behind you, but you are, your little swordsmen going back and forth and stuff. There's characters. You feel like it's you, or you feel like it's your character doing these things. And that's kind of what this is missing for me. And when you strip that kind of narrative and hook out of something like this, it loses good tactics games, which kind of all these kind of sort of turn into. So things like Ogre Tactics or Final Fantasy Tactics or Into the Breach and all these kind of things that come later. They work in certain different ways, but there's always a sense of the people behind the story, and that just isn't here. And so I'm like, I don't care about this War of Independence because I don't care about anything in it. So yeah, I don't know. It just feels a bit empty. I felt a bit empty to me. Yeah,
empty. And I think there was obviously a lot of source material they could have leaned into as well, and it did. Well, I don't know why, but it's sort of missing, isn't it?
I'm presuming if it's based on a comic, there's characters.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's two main characters in it, which I didn't felt like they came across really at all.
No, I don't. I didn't feel like I couldn't tell. You told me I didn't know this was based on a comic. I knew Lupo Alberto was because the comic's part of the game, but I was just thought this was some kind of strategy game based around the War of Independence in a kind of comic Gallic way.
You were either Sergeant Cornelius Chesterfield or Corporal Blutch. Not you'd know.
No, I don't think that comes across in the game at all.
No, I agree. No.
So there you go. That's North and South. Well, that's it for this week. A strange old bunch of games, but we have looked at Gauntlet free because there's no Gauntlet in it. It's a weird one. They should slap another fantasy name on it. I don't know, Dragon Quest or. Well,
we saw it, didn't we? It reminded me. I think you excellently picked out the Druid 3 Warlock. It's like you reminded me of that. This is basically a game.
Isometric Druid.
Yeah, it's an isometric Druid. Yeah, it's just not what it's making itself out to be. It's just sticking that on there so people go, oh, Gauntlet 3, I'll buy that because I've got the other two.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Then we played Lupo Alberto, the video game, which was all right. It was just
too expensive,
but it's too expensive basic platformer, but it was kind of okay. Moonshadow, again, pretty good.
Pretty good, actually, that.
Pretty decent. Good music. Cricket Crapton. Crap. just
rubbish.
Just rubbish. Out for a duck. Get lost. And finally, North and South, which
lacked character.
Yeah. Weird for coming based on a comic. You would think it would have. There you go. That's it for this week. Next week we round off June. We've got another 5 games still to get through. A lot of games. There's still quite a few games coming out for the C64, isn't there? 14 games this month. So next week, what we're looking at Supremacy.
Good music on
that. Passing Shot.
Good music on that.
Viz. Spiky in Transylvania.
Okay.
Who knows? And finally, to wrap off the month, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Ooh
la la.
Look at my boobs.
No.
Oops.
Indeed. That's coming up next week. And we've got some crap verts and all kinds of things as well. So just rounding off the month. I've already done the Patreon stuff and I did at the start, so not much more to add to the end of this one. You got anything you wish to add, Graham, before we sign off?
It's been a little bit of an odd episode, hasn't it? We've got, like you said, games that it's weird. We've got games that just have got fundamental design issues, and then we've got games that are mistitled, misnomers. You know, it's just a shame. But there's clearly some Italian talent in there because Lupo and Moonshadow, you know, they weren't perfect, but they weren't bad. Considering they've not had anything out that particular area before. And Moonshadow, I still think probably out of all the games there, it's probably the one to go and have a look at because I think there's enough people who are listeners of the podcast and who know I know the kind of games they're into, might find something in Moonshadow. And there might be one that them not, because I'd never heard of it prior to this. So maybe it's a little bit of a hidden gem for people that like that kind of game. And I know there's a few of them in our Discord, for example, that might go for that. So
yeah, it's an interesting one. Like you said, though, I think it might be one to play with some kind of infinite life cheat just to try.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. If you've got a trained version, I'd hit that up. I think.
Yeah, I would as well. So there you go. That's it for this week. We've got, as I said, 5 more games coming up. I don't think there's much more to say. So we'll get going. We'll leave you to the rest of your day. We hope you have a good week. As ever, I have been Adrian Mills.
And I have been Cricket captain Graham Raddings. I'm not. Oh, I hate that game. Hate it. Real hatred. Real hatred is timeless, Adrian. Remember that.
What was that? Is that Myth? What was that? No, that was Last Ninja 3, wasn't it?
Ninjas 3. It was Ninjas 3.
It was Ninja Cubed. This is 9 ninjas. Whatever it was, I don't know. Yeah, and you've been listening to, I don't know, Cricket Crapton.
The Crapton factor, yeah.
We've been out for a duck. And we will see you again next week. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Zapped to the Past podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Commodore 64 games, as well as the music, films and TV from around the 1980s, driven, of course, by the issue of Zap 64 magazine published at that time. We will return with a whole new batch of games and stuff to talk about next week. Until then, if you want to listen to or download previous episodes of Zapped to the Past, and why wouldn't you, they can all be found on our website at zappedtothepast.com, as well as being available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, Audible, Player FM, and, well, pretty much anywhere where we can upload them. By the way, we do always love to hear from our amazing listeners, so if you'd like to contact us about anything in the podcast or beyond, you can do so by emailing us at zappedtothepast@gmail.com. We're also active on Twitter under @ZapTother, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and most social media platforms. Just search for Zap to the Past and you'll find us. Oh, and if you like the podcast and what we're doing, please do like, share, review, rate us. It really helps. Something, apparently. The Zap to the Past podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Raddings and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 Studio. All opinions expressed are those of the writers, and while we indeed love Zap 64 magazine, the Zap to the Past podcast is not affiliated with it in any way. Stay safe, see you next time, and remember, we play these games so you don't have to.